She was never told why her mother rarely hugged her. That was the first secret that lived in the walls of Isabella de Vero's house. A mansion so large it echoed with silence. Every morning, footsteps glided through marble halls. Servants straightened already perfect pillows. Chefs prepared breakfasts that often went untouched. On the second floor, behind a door painted ivory white, Isabella sat in front of a gold-framed mirror, brushing hair she never felt she owned. She was 18, beautiful in the cold, polished way a statue is beautiful. Long chestnut hair, pale skin without a freckle, eyes the color of glass. Anyone would think she had everything: wealth, status, a future carved in diamonds. But beneath her skin, something wordless pulsed. A hunger? A question. A crack in a perfect life. Her mother Vivian never looked at her with softness, only precision. Sit straight, shoulders back. You era de Verex. Not some street girl. Street girl. The phrase always stung her, as if somewhere deep inside she was exactly that, as if Vivian knew. But Isabella said nothing. She never asked why her mother's eyes hardened whenever she smiled too freely, or laughed too loud, or showed too much fire. Devereux women were meant to glide, not burn. That it was on the other side of the city, past the manicured avenues, through neighborhoods where streetlights flickered and dogs barked at night, that Maya Alvarez threw open the door of a crumbling apartment, shouting back at her foster brother, "I'm late!" again. "If Mrs. Cortez yells at me, I'll blame you." She wasn't delicate. Her hair was black and wild, her laughter sharp, airwalk fast. She had oil on her hands, from fixing her friend's broken motorcycle, a bruise on her cheek from a street scuffle, and a fire in her eyes that warned anyone, "Don't test me." She had no mother instructing her to sit straight, no father to remind her of honor, no rules except survival. She never asked where she came from, why her name was Maya Alvarez, when Alvarez never belonged to any face she remembered. She was told the truth, abandoned at a hospital as an infant. No family, no past. But deep inside, though she'd never admit it, there were nights she dreamt of faces she had never seen: marble, chandeliers, silence, a distant, unfamiliar voice calling a different name. She always woke angry. Isabella and Maya lived in two worlds that were never meant to cross, one built on lies, the other on loss. But fate, drunk and cruel, does not respect walls, and 15 miles away, in a small, private nursing home, an old woman lay dying, her eyes clouded, breath thin. In her trembling hand, a letter, unsent, unconfessed. Her name was Elise Moreau. She was a nurse who switched them. Elise Moreau had carried the secret in the soft pouch of her belly for almost 19 years. In the beginning, it had been righteous, at least that's what she told herself. A kindness done to a terrified new mother whose husband measured love in balance sheets. It had become fear when the new mother died 6 months later. Then, habiti. Then, rot. Secrets are living things. If you keep them long enough, they grow teeth. She pressed the call button. No one came. The letter crinkled in her palm. She had rewritten it 10 times, always stopping at the same place. I took the wrong baby on purpose. Not mistake. Not accident. She could no longer pretend to herself that she hadn't known. Vivian de Voro had been hemorrhaging after the delivery. Elise remembered the husband's voice. Cool, surgical, disappointed. There will be consequences, he said. Not to the bleeding wife, but to the room. To everyone who had failed to produce a son. Another woman, a teenage girl with no one listed in the emergency contact field, had delivered a healthy infant an hour earlier and vanished before dawn. One rich, one poor. Both girls, both screaming as if already aware that the world had started with a lie. Elise, lonely and brittle, had looked at the fine white blanket stitched with the letter D, and thought, I can fix this. She told herself that she was saving the unwanted child, that the Devereux name would shelter the orphan. She told herself many tender stories. She never told anyone the truth. She coughed a clot of old phlegm into a tissue, slid the letter into an envelope, and scrawled a name she had no right to write: Isabella de Verex. She added a second envelope for the other girl, because the lie had been to Maya Alvarez. She did not know if Alvarez was even real, just the surname scribbled by a social worker who found an infant alone. Elise closed her eyes and whispered, Forgive me, as if a ceiling could absolve her. When she opened them, a nurse stood over her, a woman with careful hands and the soft, exhausted gaze of those who carry strangers' nights. Elise grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. "This goes out today," she said, pressing the envelopes into the nurse's palm. "If I die, it goes anyway. Promise." The nurse looked at the crooked handwriting, at the names she recognized from the city's newspapers, for the Devereux name was always in print somewhere, and nodded. "I promise." Across the city, Isabella's morning began with the sound of discreet conflict. Hushed voices in the corridor. A door closed with more force than its price tag justified. She sat on the bench by the window and watched the garden staff trim hedges already shaped into submission. Her father, Laurent, was leaving early. The briefcase with its silver clasps glinted like a threat. "Where is she?" he asked, the words sharpened to cut anyone who touched them. "Waiting for you in the blue salon," the house manager said. "Careful, Madame asked the tia." "I asked the tia not be bothered at all." Vivian's voice floated from the staircase, smooth, perfectly made. She descended like a chandelier lowered by an invisible winch, diamonds like frost around her throat. Her face was the picture of composure, the kind that is expensive to maintain. "Isabella, darling," she said without looking at her, "your fitting is at noon, and for God's sake throw away those boots. They make you look like you're auditioning for a factory." Isabella glanced down at her boots. Black leather, scuffed, stolen from the closet of the driver's daughter who'd left them behind after a drunken night by the pool 2 summers ago. She loved those boots. They were the only thing on her body that felt like a choice.
"Yes."
"Mother," she said, and the phrase slipped out in the perfect pitch required. The one that meant nothing and everything. Laurent paused by her, studied her face as if it were a painting he suspected was forged. There were moments ready unfussed, when his eyes softened, as if he, too, heard a dissonant note in the house and could not find its source. He touched her chin with 2 fingers. "You've grown," he said, a statement at once absurd and late. "Don't let fake people use you. We are surrounded." She wanted to ask him who the fake people were his board. His friends. Her. But then his phone vibrated, and he was already walking away, his voice turning into the currency he loved most. At school, Isabella moved through halls like a prophecy. Girls orbited her. Boys burned themselves on the idea of her. She wore uniforms altered by a tailor who understood that power lives in the hemline. Teachers graded her with more gentleness than the facts justified. She was either adored or despised. Between those states was airless space. Yet, in the music room, she sometimes forgot her role. She would sit at the piano when no one was watching and play not the concert pieces she'd been trained to perform, but a sequence she didn't know. She knew minor and searching, something old as sorrow. When she played, she felt less polished, more person. Today, her fingers found the keys again, and the room loosened around her. She closed her eyes and thought of a road she had never walked, a market she had never visited, a laugh that was not hers, but felt like a sister's. On the other side of the city, Maya's laugh was bouncing off concrete. She sprinted after a bus she had no money to board and grabbed the side rail, flipping herself onto the back step as it pulled away. The driver swore. She blew him a kiss and swung herself into the aisle, landing on light feet that had outrun trouble since she learned to run. "You can't ride if you don't pay," the driver said. "Angry only by habit." "Then don't look," she answered, and the bus erupted in the kind of laughter that happens only when everyone on board understands that the rules are a game and poverty loses by design. She slid beside her foster brother, Lois, who kept a weird, fierce loyalty to the family that had never been a family. He handed her a folded flyer. "You're late," Mrs. Cortez said. "If you skip the bakery shift again." "She hire her nephew. Her nephew has 3 fingers and 1 eyebrow," Maya said, stuffing the flyer into a jacket. "He'll scare Debret." Louis grinned. The flyer fell open between them. A charity gala. All gold script in smug hearts. The Devereux Foundation Youth Empowerment Fundraiser. Black tie, silent auction. Photographs of smiling executives, kneeling beside brown children like they had discovered them in the wild. Maya rolled her eyes so hard it was almost a somersault. "Do they empower youth by not paying them?" she said. "Here's the crazy part," Louise said. "They're paying temp staff for the event. Cash. Good money. They need people who can move fast and not steal the silver spoons." "I can move fast," Maya said. "I don't steal spoons. I steal time." "So you're going—" "If they let me through the kitchen door, I'll run the whole place by midnight." Mrs. Cortez did yell when Maya arrived, because yelling was the only love she knew how to give. The bakery smelled like sugar and ambition. Maya tied on an apron, burned her fingers on trays, charmed regulars, mispriced a cake on purpose for a kid who wanted to surprise his mother, and met the morning with her usual blend of defiance and competence. She was not good. She was necessary. Mid-shift, a woman in a navy suit entered, looking both out of place and entirely. Surese, wasn't he? She ordered 12 brioches for the foundation breakfast and asked if the bakery did event staffing. Sometimes, Mrs. Cortez said, deferring without realizing it. Ask Maya. She runs when she runs. The woman assessed Maya, as one might a horse teeth. Legs, temperament, name. Maya, she said, and left it there. Background, hustle. References, Mrs. Cortez. And gravity. The woman's mouth tightened in a way that meant she was trying not to smile. Tomorrow afternoon at the Fairmont. Black trousers, white shirt, hair tied back. You'll be paid at the end of the night. Don't drink. Don't flirt. Don't steal. Define don't flirt, Maya said, because mischief was a language she was fluent in. The woman slid her a day pass and a badge with a temporary barcode. Don't. After work, Maya went home to find her foster mother asleep in a chair, the television throwing blue light. The apartment smelled like fried onions and regret. She tiptoed past, climbed the narrow stairs to the room she shared with 2 other girls, pulled the badge from her pocket, and held it up like proof of some future she wasn't sure she wanted. She wasn't afraid of the rich. She was hungry for their rooms. Isabella's day curdled by afternoon. The fitting was a war fought with pins. This waist, the seamstress murmured. Too loudly, we need 2 centimeters less. It's bones, Isabella said. I can't change the furniture I was born with. Viviane appeared in the mirror, a mother-shaped word made mostly of bone herself. Discipline changes everything, she said. You know what the cameras do? Isabella thought. Dote de bour. The dress fit perfectly. What they wanted was a disappearance. Later, the house hummed with preparations for the gala. Florists moved like quiet birds. A woman with a headset whispered into her wrist. Everything was white and glass, and something like virtue staged for sale. The Devoro Foundation had rebuilt schools, funded scholarships, financed clinics in countries the family's corporations quietly exploited. In this city, philanthropy was a mirror that money held to its face to confirm its beauty. Isabella watched men erect a temporary stage over the pool. She imagined falling through it in front of everyone. She imagined not climbing out. You'll open the program, Vivian said, placing a hand on her shoulder without touching her. A short speech. Smiled gently. Tell them about the Youth Literacy Initiative. Sound like it matters to you, even if it doesn't. What if it does? Isabella sighed, surprising herself. Vivian's eyes flickered as if a moth had flown through. Don't make jokes, she said softly. People misinterpret sincerity. At dusk, the city leaned into the kind of golden hour photographers beg strangers to notice. At the Fairmont, temp staff, lined up in a service corridor, painted a shade of beige, so neutral it erased history. Maya stood between a girl who chewed gum like it owed her rent, and a boy who had ironed his shirt so flat it shone. The supervisor, the woman from the bakery, walked down the line, tucking loose hair, straightening collars, stripping away small rebellions. When she reached Maya, she paused. Are you going to behave? I'll be the portrait of good behavior, Maya said. If the portrait had a knife behind it, he'll be on trespassés in the West Garden. Tonti, ita, canapes. Don't comment on the art. What if the art comments on me? The woman sighed. Then keep walking. When the doors opened, wealth rushed in like weather. Men who wore their watches like little suns. Women whose faces were curated narratives. Laughter made of ice and performance. Maya smiled the way she had learned to smile for cops. Disarming, dangerous, impossible to hold. She drifted through clusters of conversations and left behind circles of people slightly more awake than she found them. She caught snatches of talk that sounded like code venture, impact, exit, optics, ESG, platform, scale, give back. She translated it automatically, a skill she didn't know she had. We rename it. We sell it back with a bow. On the far side of the garden, an outdoor staircase led to the Devoro estate, which was connected by a glass walk. Maya glanced up and, for no reason she could justify, felt her skin lift into goose. She stood still, as if a violin had been tuned in the room and nobody had touched it. Isabella stepped onto the terrace. The crowd adjusted to her presence the way a flock adjusts to a predator, opening and closing a path with fearful grace. She wore a dress that had apparently agreed to remain on her body only if it could move like wind. Her hair was swept into a shape that made her look older and younger at once. She smiled, shook hands, accepted compliments she didn't ask for, allowed women to use her as a mirror for their own fading. Their eyes met because the air demanded it. Maya's body registered something before her brain did. A drop in her stomach like an elevator starting down. A throb in her left palm where a scar lived. Isabella went still. The surface of a lake waiting to reveal the shape of a submerged thing. Maya laughed because she didn't know what else to do. It came out wrong, too sharp, bouncing against the marble like an insult. Isabella flinched, not because of the sound, but because of the recognition that had no name. Their faces did not match. Their lives did not rhyme. Yet something fundamental leaned toward itself. A guest bumped Maya's tray, an accident that became a test. She caught 3 crystal flutes, mid-air. The crowd applauded. Isabella did not. She stepped forward, taking 1 flute she did not drink, and said, very softly, "Have we met?" "No," Maya said. "But you look like you've been haunting my dreams without paying rent." Isabella surprised herself by laughing a real laugh, the kind that shakes off a performance like rain. It made 2 men at her elbow reassess her value. It made Vivian, who was watching from across the terrace, narrow her eyes until nothing but calculation remained. She walked toward them as if entering a scene she refused to miss. "Maya," the supervisor hissed from nowhere. "Keep moving." Maya should have obeyed. Her whole life survived on the physics of obedience and defiance. She moved 1 step, and then did not move again. "What's your name?" Isabella asked. "Maya, Isabella." "I know," Maya said. "The foundations all over the city." "Well," Isabella said, almost shy. "So, are you now?" The conversation lasted exactly 14 seconds. But it was the kind of 14 seconds that resets a clock. Vivian inserted herself between them with a smile honed to fill it. "Darling," she said to Isabella, "Mr. Halvorsen wants to discuss your speech about literacy." She turned to Maya and applied the smile like frost. "Could you be a dear and bring the Larkin table the vegetarian option?" "Could you be a dear and tell me where that is?" Maya said, matching sweetness for poison. "The table with people who look like they don't eat," Vivian said, "already gone, leaving behind a scent that cost more than a month of rent." Maya watched Isabella follow her mother. She said, "To no one, you're not theirs." It was a reckless sentence. It had no reason. It was also true. The program began. Music swelled. Lights dimmed. A video of children reading played on screens in tasteful corners. Laurent took the stage and said words in a voice made for rooms like this. He introduced his daughter as if presenting an asset. Isabella walked forward. The crowd raised their faces to be blessed. She could feel Vivian's gaze at the base of her neck, a hand that could break bone. She looked briefly toward the service corridor where the staff gathered like a shadow, and caught the suggestion of Mayahen. Outline, a pulse, a dare, that she began, as scripted, with gratitude and statistics. She said the word impact like she believed it. She told a story she had not lived about a school she had visited once for exactly 37 minutes. Then, without warning, a small engine in her mouth changed gears. "When I was 13, she said, dropping her prepared text to the podium, "I realized I could read people better than books. I could tell when someone said philanthropy, but meant penance. I could tell when a smile asked for something it didn't deserve. And I could tell, even then, that the story of who we are, of who I am, has parts missing." Vivian's hand tightened on the stem of her glass, until the glass understood it was mortal. The crowd tipped forward, the way crowds do when a woman wanders off script. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," Isabella sighed, and then she did. A note had slipped free inside her and was singing. "But if we want to talk about literacy, let's talk about the stories we write about ourselves. Let's talk about the sentences we refuse to hear. Let's talk about the sound cut." The microphone died with a small, embarrassed pop. It was a kind of technical glitch that is not a glitch. The audience laughed expansively. The technician pretended to fuss. Vivian looked sedately stricken. Laurent on stage moved smoothly into a joke about in the system and thanked his brave daughter, and invited the band to play something light while we fix our little hiccup. The band did as the band was told. Isabella stood there, suddenly deafened by approval. She smiled correctly, and walked away correctly, and did not break correctly. In the side corridor, she pressed her back to the wall, and breathed as if air were expensive, and she'd gone over her budget. Maya slid into the corridor by accident or because there are no accidents. She had abandoned a tray to a boy who was hopeless with balance and followed her gut, which had never lied to her with a straight face. "You okay?" she asked, which in her mouth meant, "Are you drowning?" Isabella nodded, which meant yes. "You don't look okay. Is that how you talk to guests? You don't look like a guest. You look like someone who fell through a floor and is trying to pretend the room beneath is the one you meant to be in." Isabella stared at her like a person looking into a mirror and finding the ocean. She wanted to say, "I know you." She said, "Do you ever feel like someone's watching your life and taking notes?" "Always," Maya said. "I steal the pen when I can." A security guard rounded the corner. Maya became the portrait of staff innocence. Isabella became Devoto again, in the space of a breath. "Mr. Verix," the guard said, "your mother would like a word." "I bet she would," Isabella sighed, and then, to Maya, quietly, "If I wanted to talk to you again, how would I do that?" "You won't. But if you do," Maya tapped the barcode on her badge, "find a door no one notices. I'm usually behind it." They went their separate ways, which is how paths begin to cross. That night, as champagne flattened and speeches thickened, as checks were written and photographed, as the city behaved as if effort were virtue, two small things happened that mattered more than the amount of money the foundation raised. The first, the nurse at the private facility where Elise Moreau lay dying, sealed 2 envelopes and placed stamps on them. With the care of someone sending children across a dangerous street, she put them in the outgoing mail bin, then changed her mind and walked them herself to the blue metal box on the corner, because promises mean nothing if you don't walk them to the end. She watched the envelope slide into the dark mouth and felt lighter and worse. The second, a man in a gray suit who didn't look like he should be bored, slipped into the service corridor and handed the supervisor a business card. "Side contract," he said. "Private event next week. Discretion required." The supervisor glanced at the card and then at Maya, translating the gray suit's gaze. It was the gaze the city kept for girls it did not know how to name. The supervisor stepped between them without moving. "We'll let you know," she said, and her voice had the old iron of women who remember being 20 and fast. When the gala ended, when tips had been counted and trays scraped, Maya walked home, her feet blistered, her pockets heavier than usual, her head buzzing like she had drunk someone else's champagne through her skin. She passed storefronts with their metal blinds half down, past the alley where she had once punched a boy who grabbed her too hard, past a mural of a saint with a cigarette, and stopped at a pawnshop window where a piano sat in the dust, keys yellow as old teeth. She pressed her fingers against the glass and played the air. The melody that came out belonged to someone else. Isabella did not sleep. She sat in the dark on the floor of her closet, a place where the house forgot to be certain. She took down a shoebox from the shelf. Inside, things she was not allowed to want. A Polaroid from a school trip where she had been ugly and free. A paper crane a boy made for her in 9th grade whom she never kissed. A bracelet of braided thread that appeared in her locker on a day she had cried in the bathroom. And a hospital bracelet found long ago in her mother's vanity drawer, with a name that was not hers. She didn't know why she kept that bracelet. She wasn't supposed to be old enough to have one from her own birth. The hospital used a different style then. This one was cracked and cheap, with the surname written in ballpoint. Alvarez. She touched the letters until they looked like something else. She told herself the obvious story, that Vivian had known a charity case once, had saved a child, had kept a memento. She did not tell herself the other story. The other story was feral. The other story scratched from the inside. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Nice speech until they unplugged you. If you ever want to say the rest, I know a rooftop with no microphones. Isabella's heart executed a reckless skip. She typed, "Who is this? 3 dots. 3 dots. Then, door no one notice us." She looked at the number again, at the digits like a dare, and said out loud, because the room was listening, "No." She put the phone face down. She picked it up again. She wrote, "When morning broke with the damp breath of the ocean." The city, hungover and industrious, pretended it had slept well. The blue mailbox that had accepted Elisa's confession was emptied by a man who loved his job for reasons his co-workers found quaint. He sorted the letters with the rhythm of a ritual. At the distribution center, a machine read addresses and spat the envelopes toward their fates with indifferent efficiency. One envelope Isabella's was routed to a private delivery service the Devoro estate contracted. The other Maya's went the long way, through hands that smelled like paper and diesel, to a street where mailboxes were sometimes pried open with knives. At the nursing home, Elisa asked for water and forgiveness, and received only one of the two. The nurse who had mailed the letters sat beside her when the breath turned into a climb and then a fall. The nurse held her hand because there was no one to summon who would not arrive too late. Elise tried to say one last thing. Something about a bracelet. Something about a night in a storm when power failed and babies cried in the dark. But the air in her lungs had become someone else's. The city did not notice when she died. The city does not notice every death. By noon, Isabella was in the library, which smelled like leather and quiet wealth. She sat with an admissions counselor from a university whose buildings looked like they were designed to impress God. Words like legacy and fit and leadership stacked themselves into a staircase she was expected to climb. "I want to study music," she said, and watched the counselor not hear her. "Or maybe urban sociology." "Excellent," the counselor said, ticking a box labeled Arts Service. "You'll thrive in our community." "What if I don't want to thrive in a community that looks exactly like the one I'm in now?" she wanted to say. But what she actually said was something about being excited for the challenge. She performed it beautifully. It felt like sleep paralysis. Her phone vibrated. An image, not of a rooftop, of a pawn shop window, a dusty piano, a hand she recognized, held up like an invitation. "Now," the message said. She stood, the counselor blinked. "Everything." "All right, perfect," Isabella said, and left a perfect shape of herself in the chair to keep talking. Maya arrived at the pawn shop early, and regretted it immediately. She had meant to send the photo as a joke spelled break, a pebble thrown at a palace window and then forget about it. She did not expect the girl in the glass dress to walk up the block, as if she had always walked up blocks like this. Isabella kept her chin up in a way that transformed danger into scenery. People stared. A man whistled. She did not flinch, and Maya decided she liked her for that, even if Lakin felt like a decision she'd regret. "You came," Maya said, as if she wasn't surprised. "I needed air," Isabella said, "and a person who wouldn't unplug me." "Careful," Maya said, half laughing. "I unplug a lot of things." They stood side by side at the window, like strangers practicing intimacy. The piano sat solemn and shameful, its price tag dangling like a public secret. "You played?" Maya asked. "Sometimes," Isabella said. "You in here?" Maya said, touching her chest. "In real life, it's mostly running." They walked without saying they were walking, which is how the best walks begin. Maya led, Isabella followed. Then they traded. Then it became something that had no leader. They turned down streets, with stories written in spray paint, and Maya told Isabella where the good fruit carts were and which alleys were lies, and where to find a woman who sewed holes in clothes and hearts. Isabella pointed out a mosaic on the side of a building and explained how the pattern forced your eye to travel the way the artist meant. Maya pretended not to care, and then cared. "Why did you look at me like that last night?" Isabella asked finally. "Like what?" "Like you knew something." I don't, Maya said. She almost added, "Except the Yore no teres," but she saved the sentence for later. She was reckless, not cruel. They found the rooftop with no microphones by accident, because most of the good things are accidents. It was above a public garage, accessed by a metal door that had forgotten it was supposed to be locked. Up there, weeds were attempting a coup against concrete. The city spread itself out like a rich ant. The wind ran its fingers through the hair without asking. "Say the rest," Maya said. "The rest of what?" "Your speech." "The part they didn't buy." "I didn't write that part," Isabella said. "It rode me." Then read. Isabella spoke slowly at first. Then, as if the words had been waiting for a roof, she talked about the way charity can be a performance, how institutions can launder guilt into trophies, how real literacy means learning to read power. She didn't have citations. She had a feeling. Maya listened like she didn't want to miss the moment the feeling found its name. "You sound like trouble," Maya said when she finished, and meant it as praise. "You sound like freedom," Isabella sighed, and meant it as confession. Maya lay back on the warm concrete, eyes up to a blue interrupted by wires. What if we're both? Then may God help everyone else. They laughed in the way people laugh when they are close to something new and can't slow down. Isabella's phone vibrated again. She ignored it. It vibrated again with the persistence of a mother who refuses to be ignored. She sighed and looked. 22 missed calls. 3 messages from Vivian, precise Hazeros. Where are you? This is not acceptable. We will discuss the university meeting tonight. 1 from Laurent. Proud of you for trying. Her grin dimmed. She slipped the phone back into her bag. I should go, she said, which meant I should stay. Before you do, Maya said, reaching into her pocket. I stole this off a bulletin board for you. She unfolded a flyer. Community music workshop. Saturdays, all levels. Free if you can't pay. A phone number torn with the last strip still attached. You could be the worst one there, and nobody would unplug you. Are you coming? I don't do rooms. I can't leave fast. You left the gala slow. You saw that? I see a law, Isabella said. Like it was a surprise every time. Their shoulders touched. It felt like when a radio, through static, catches the correct frequency. They stayed too long and left too late. Isabella returned to a house that had prepared a lecture like a feast. Vivian delivered it with the dignity of a queen forced to explain bathing to a peasant. Isabella listened with half her face. The other half still remembered wind. Do you understand, Vivian concluded, that you are not a child? I am exactly that, Isabella sighed, surprising herself with the accuracy. That's the problem. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Then, for a flicker, softened with a something Isabella couldn't read. Whatever is happening to you, stop. What if it's not happening to me? Isabella said. But, for me. Laurent appeared. Hands up, peacemaker and politician. Let her breathe. Vivian, he said gently, and looked at his daughter like a man who can't remember when a room became a labyrinth. We're all adjusting. Change is change. Change. The letter addressed to Isabella Devoro arrived the next morning, heavy with oldness, smelling faintly of a life that had lost its place in time. It was added to the stack of correspondence on the foyer table, and then moved by a maid to the silver envelope tray, and then, forgotten because of a gardener's crisis with the hydrangeas, in the afternoon, as if it had its own legs. It found its way to the piano, where Isabella noticed it because the envelope had her name handwritten instead of printed in a neat, impersonal font favored by institutions. She slit it with a nail file. She read the first line. She sat down. My name is Elise Moreau, and before I die, I need to tell you what I did with your life. In an apartment where rent was a monthly war. Maya found her envelope crumpled under the front door because the slot stuck. She uncrumpled it and read her name with suspicion, because paper with her name on it usually meant debt or trouble. Inside, the same hand, the same first sentence, the same confession beginning to build its terrible house. She read it standing up, then on the edge of the bed, then on the floor, as if elevation should match certainty. She stopped at the part where the letter described a storm and a power outage and 2 babies, crying in a hallway lit by emergency lights that made everything a bad dream. She laughed once, a single bark of disbelief. She read the rest, and the laugh died of natural causes. The city continued to behave as if nothing had happened, because citywide identity crises are not on the calendar. Dogs needed walking. Buses needed chasing. Deals needed closing. In 2 separate rooms that had never met. 2 girls who had met for 14 seconds and a rooftop read the same letter written by a stranger whose absence had reached their lives before they learned their own names. Maya stood. She paced. She said out loud, to confuse the silence, No. 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 She called Luis. He didn't pick up. She went to the sink and drank water like she was putting out a fire in her chest. The letter said there were hospital records. It said the nurse had kept a box. It said a key was taped under the drawer in her nightstand. It said, I am sorry in a way that meant I am terrified of hell. Isabella did none of those things. She folded the letter very gently, put it back in the envelope, as if hoping resheathing would undo meaning, and walked to the garden. The hydrangeas were behaving now. She crouched by them and buried the envelope under the mulch with her bare hands like a witch, then immediately dug it back up, because denial is only delicious for a second. She went to the library. She looked up birth records, and found nothing because rich people make paper disappear, and poor people have their paper disappeared for them. She searched the hospital's name and the year and found a news article about a power outage after a storm. A small note in a corner column. She called the number at the bottom of Elisa's letter. It rang once, and then a recorded voice said the line had been disconnected. She thought of Maya's laugh. For a moment, made her feel named. She wrote a message. "Do you have a minute? I need a person with a knife behind her portrait." Maya replied, "Always." She sent a photo of the letter. Maya sent back a photo of the same handwriting, the same first line. Then, after the space of one heart revolution, one word, shit, that they emit, at the rooftop with no microphones, because you always return to the place where your life last made sense. Maya got there first and smoked a cigarette she didn't want. Isabella arrived with her hair uncooperative and her eyes wide open. "Before you say anything," Maya said, holding up the letter, "this is insane. I thought I was going crazy. Isabella, I still might be." They sat cross-legged facing each other like children about to make a pact. Maya read the letter out loud, as if the words were dangerous and would misbehave if not watched. Isabella read hers, quietly along. At the part about the switch, Isabella's breath, hic, at the part about the box. Maya's jaw set in a shape shaped by decision. "So," Maya said when the reading was done, "a dead nurse is telling us we're each other." "No," Isabella said automatically. And then, "Maybe. Do you want to go get the box?" "Now. Unless you've got a chariot." The nursing home was 30 minutes by train and 10 by foot. A geography lesson in inequality. They walked past a strip mall and a church with a marquee that said, "God sees what you hide," and tried not to see it. At the front desk, a young man with a name tag and a haircut that apologized for itself looked up. "Elise Moreau," Isabella said, and discovered her voice could be steel. "We're here to collect her personal effects. We're family." The word lay between them like an animal that might bite. The young man hesitated. "Family's a spell and a password." He made a call that went nowhere and then nodded toward a hallway. "Room 317. Her nurse is finishing paperwork." In the room, a thin woman with tired kindness looked at them like a storm she had predicted. "You got the letters?" she said. "I prayed you would." "Maya, start." "You knew." "I promised to send them," the nurse said. "I didn't know if you'd come." Maya looked around the room for proof that reality still existed and found a plant in need of prayer, a tiny rosary on the nightstand, a nightgown folded as if the body would return for it, and a drawer that had a key taped under it, exactly where the letter said it would be. Maya tugged the tape off with her teeth, spat a stray glue string, and held up the key. "You want to do the honors? Or should I?" "You," Isabella said. "You seem like you know how to open things and survive what's inside." Maya slid the key into the small brass lock. It turned with a click, like a mouth opening to tell the truth. Inside, a cardboard box filled with paper. Hospital forms. A Polaroid of a baby with a sticker that said Baby A. Another with a sticker that said Baby BA. Bracelet made of cheap plastic with Alvarez written in blue. Another bracelet with Devereaux. And a date, a nurse's schedule with 2 names circled, and a note written in the same cramped, guilty hand as the letters. "I switched them. I thought I could save you both. I was wrong." Isabella reached for the bracelets and stopped. Maya picked them up and held them to the light, like evidence and like prayer. The cheap plastic made a little sound when it knocked against itself. "Do you want to cry?" Maya asked, practical even with her voice rough. "I don't know how," Isabella said. "It was never taught." "Neither was I," Maya said. "We could try later. Or break something." The nurse hovered at the door, as if she wanted to bless them, and didn't know the language. "There's one more thing," she said softly, taking out a small envelope from her pocket. "Elise wrote this last night, when the pain got bad. She asked me to give it to you if you came. Maya, tuk italiano." She opened it delicately, which surprised everyone, including her. Inside, an address. A name, Bibiene, Devere, Oaks. Underneath, three words that rearranged the furniture of the air. She already knows. They stood there, the two of them, in a room where a lie had come to die and a different life had begun to breathe. Outside the window, a parking lot glittered with broken glass that had learned to imitate stars. Maya slipped the Alvarez bracelet over her wrist. It was too small and pinched the skin. Isabella slid the Devora one halfway onto her hand and stopped. Their eyes met and held like rope. "What do?" Isabella asked, a question with too many answers. First, Maya said, we don't go to your mother alone. And second, we get proof nobody can unplug. DNA. Isabella sighed the word, tasting like a dare. Swabs are cheap, Maya said. Truth is expensive. They left the nursing home with a box between them, moving as if they were carrying something that could explode if Giselda bomb. A heart, a name. The city watched without looking and kept its secrets, only because it had too many to count. And somewhere, in a house built on old paper and new money, a woman in pearls looked at her reflection for a long time. Then at the heavy door to a room nobody entered without permission, and said into the mirror, very quietly, not yet. She didn't sleep again that night. But this time the insomnia felt like a hallway with lights turning on, one after another. She Googled labs, read reviews she didn't understand, learned new words: chain of custody, non-legal paternity, buccal swab. She texted Maya, and Maya answered before the bubbles finished pulsing that walk-in lab on Harbor. Cash no names if we don't want. Opens at 9. Meet me there, Isabella wrote. Don't come alone. I never do. Maya unsweated and sent a picture of her fists. Then another of Luis making the world's worst tough face behind her. In the morning, the Devereaux house pretended normal. There were eggs that steamed politely, a mother who read the paper without moving her eyes, a father whose coffee tasted like meetings. Isabella arrived late on purpose and kissed the air near Vivian's cheek, a ritual they performed to remind themselves they were human. You skipped your practice tests. Bien aside, each word wrapped like a gift with invisible barbed wire. I'm studying something else, Isabella said, and drank water like she'd been running. What is it? History. We have people for that. Not this history. Vivian folded the paper. If this is about last night's performance, I suggest you avoid dramatics. You were charming until you weren't. It was unwise. What's the word for when it feels like your whole life tilted and the furniture started sliding? Adolescence. I'm 19. Then it's a face extended by indulgence. Laurent entered like a weather system. I've got to go downtown. Isa, he said, pinching her shoulder affectionately, as if he remembered how to love when his hands were moving. Let's talk later. About colleges. About truth, she murmured. Too soft for him to catalog. At the door, a stack of mail waited in a silver tray. She felt the urge to hide it, to swallow the letter whole, to turn it into something her body could metabolize. Instead, she tucked it into her bag, where it pressed against the box's Polaroids like it wanted to hatch into a Sirenda. She took the driver because leaving without a driver would be a declaration. Anne had him drop her 3 blocks from the lab. She knew cameras. She knew where their blind spots lived. She slid into a thrift store and out the back door, into an alley, into herself. Maya was already there, leaning on a parking meter like it owed her rent, a hoodie wrapped around her like a thought. Luis loitered, pretending to care about a sports app, eyes flicking everywhere because he'd never forgiven the world for the first time it disappointed him. Cash, Maya said. No selfies? No names. No names. If they push paperwork, we walk. The lab's waiting room looked like a dentist's office had given up on happiness. There were posters about health that made loneliness feel medical. A woman behind glass called numbers, with a monotone that could flatten storms. Maya slid to the window. We're here for a sibling test, she said. We want a half-sibling probability and, if you can, a maternity comparison with this. She slid the Devoto bracelet across the counter like a piece of contraband. The woman didn't blink. We don't test jewelry. It's not jewelry, Isabella said, and the woman looked up, met her eyes, and decided not to ask. 2 buccal swabs each, the woman said. Results in 3 to 5 business days depending on lab volume. Expedite, Maya said. That's an extra fee. We like fees, Isabella said. With an ease she hated herself. For Dot in the sample room, they sat in chairs that had seen other people swab the inside of their cheeks and hand over their saliva like a key. The attendant wore gloves and a look that promised nothing. When she finished, she sealed the samples with a sticker that felt ceremonial. Results will be emailed to the addresses you provide, the attendant said. Paper, Maya said. We'll pick up. Fine. They left and stood on the sidewalk. 2 girls who had given the universe a piece of their mouths and asked it to respond politely. What if it says no? Isabella asked. Then we set it on fire, Maya said. What if it says yes? Then we set something bigger on fire. They split. Isabella walked fast, because if she slowed, she would stop, and if she stopped, she would sink. She turned the corner and almost collided with a woman with a camera dressed as a phone. The woman's eyes flicked from Isabella's face to the estate crest on her bag, and 1,000 small calculations lit up behind her pupils. "Me steperex," she said. "Sugar and poison." "Quick question." "No," Isabella said, not slowing. "I heard your speech got cut. And? Comment. Are you planning to take on your family's foundation? Are you the rebel, Devoro?" Isabella tucked her chin and wore silence like a cloak. The woman took photos anyways, breadcrumbing pixels for a story that didn't yet exist. In the reflection of a shop window, Isabella saw the shadow of a gray suit across the street, the same model from the gala. He was pretending to be interested in a delivery truck, which was a poor impersonation. She kept walking. She made a turn she didn't need to make, to see if he followed. He did. Maya noticed the gray suits earlier than most people would have. They didn't look like cops, and didn't look like debt, but they had the smell of both. She took 3 alleys, and climbed a fence to go home a way she didn't prefer. She found the apartment door slightly ajar, and stopped breathing until she heard laughter inside. Louis looked up from the couch. "Lock is busted again," he said. "I'll fix it, after I pretend to fix it." On the coffee table, the letter lay open. Their foster mother, Mariela, leaned over it with elbows planted like roots. Her eyebrows climbed mountains, then fell. She looked at Maya with something like fear. "What is that?" she asked, throat tight. "A letter from a dead woman," Maya said. "About a dead truth." Mariela sat back, hand to her chest. "Maya." "Don't," Maya said. "If you say, 'I always knew you were too much for this place,' I'll have to forgive you, and I can't afford that today." Mariela shook her head. "No. I was going to say, I knew you weren't born small. I never thought you were. You always carried yourself like your name was longer than the one on your paper." Maya's jaw softened, then remembered its job. "There might be money in this," Louise said carefully, which is another way of saying there might be danger. "Or a lawsuit. Or agun. Or ador." "I'm not suing a hospital with lawyers that wear cufflinks the size of planets," Maya said. "I want answers. I want a face that explains my face. Start with the one who already knows," Louise said, tapping the second slip from the envelope with the address. "The one that had the mother's name like a fuse." "Not yet," Maya said, surprising herself. "We do this our way. We don't show up to their house like a movie extra getting thrown out." "Then what?" "We bring them somewhere they don't control." "Like where?" "Like the rooftop, with no microphones." Isabella tried to make it home unwatched, but money buys eyes. The gray suit kept pace with the discreetness of a cat. When she turned into the driveway, a car she didn't recognize was already there. Long and black, and suffering from an identity crisis about whether it was a car or a threat. Inside, a woman whose cheekbones were arguments stepped out. Her hair was the color of legal paper. "Miss Devoro," she said, extending a card. "I am from Markgraven Kane. We represent entities interested in the well-being of your family." "Entities," Isabella said, rolling the word between her teeth. "That sounds like ghosts. We heard about your speech." My microphone cut out. Systems sometimes fail, and often on purpose. The woman's smile didn't crack. "People in your position sometimes need counsel. People in my position sometimes need privacy. That's in shorter supply." "Then we're done." "Not quite." The woman slid a folder toward her. "If you feel curious about your birth, it might be wise to keep that curiosity within the family. There are methods." "Quiet. Once." Isabella stared at the folder as if it might bite. "Who sent you?" "People who love you." The woman's eyes flicked toward the upstairs windows, in a way that made Isabella want to break glass with her bare hands. "If you pursue this, the story could get comple. Kete. Families, when complicated, sometimes fall apart. We are very good at keeping complicated things in one piece." Isabella di Danti take the folder. "Goodbye," she said, and closed the door with the soft care one uses for very fragile and very dangerous things. In her room, she locked a door that had never needed locking until yesterday. She texted Maya without preamble. "Someone knows already. They sent a lawyer with a calm face and a threat wearing perfume." "Of course they did," Maya wrote. "Bring them to us. Not the other way. Rooftop, sunset. I'll bring a plan that looks like an accident. We're not criminals, Isabella typed, and then deleted because it felt like foam in a fire. We're daughters, Maya sent back. Some days, it's the same thing. They met at sunset. The sky had the decency to be dramatic about it. Isabella brought the box. Maya brought a backpack that had solved problems before. She also brought a portable recorder, a thing she used when a cop lied or a landlord changed the story. She clicked it on with a flick that felt like choosing a side. We invite her, Maya said. Just air. No, father. No lawyers. No cameras. If she shows with muscle, we walk. If she shows alone, we listen and we don't cry. Or we cry and make it useful. How do we get her here? Isabella asked, although she already knew. Send her one sentence, nobody ignores. Isabella stared at her phone. It felt heavier now. A device that could change the composition of blood. She typed, "Meet me alone. I know." She paused, then added the address, then deleted the address, then added it again. She stared at the blinking cursor until it looked like a heartbeat. She hit send. The response came too quickly. Where are you? Then, is anyone with you? Then, do not speak to anyone until we talk. Alone, rooftop at Piermont Garage, Isabella wrote. If I see anyone with you, I leave. There was a long space where a mother weighed control against fear. 15 minutes. Vivian wrote, do not move. They moved anyway up to the roof, to the farthest corner, behind a low structure that hid water tanks and a secret or two. The wind had a particular taste up here. Old tires, an ocean, and the electricity of choices. The city's hum sounded like 1,000 conversations, pretending not to be connected. A car gripped the curb below with the kind of brakes that cost extra. Vivian got out. She was in flats, she never publicized. Hair pulled back, face bare in a way Isabella had rarely seen. She looked young and ancient at once. She climbed the stairs, alone. Halfway up. She stopped and composed herself, because she only knew how to enter rooms lit perfectly. When she pushed through the door, her eyes found Isabella as if drawn by a magnet, then slid to Maya with a flicker that could have been fear, could have been recognition, could have been a memory that didn't line up with the one she sold herself. Who is this? She asked, for the shape of the question. Me, Maya said. And maybe you, if we're counting wrong? Vivian's mouth tightened. This is not the place. It's the only place, Isabella said. Vivian looked at Isabella's hands, at the box between them, at the bracelets that might as well have been detonators. Where did you get that? From the woman who took our lives apart and tried to paste them back with a story, Maya said. Sevieth. She left receipts. Vivian turned to the edge of the roof, as if the city could answer her better than her daughter could. When she turned back, her face had rearranged itself into something closer to human. She unhinged a part of her posture that had been welded shut for 2 decades. I knew, she said, that it wasn't triumph. It was a confession in the same tone she used to order flowers. Calm/precise. Devastating. How long? Isabella asked. Voice barely shaped. Not then. Vivian's eyes moved to the distant water, the way people look at horizons when they want a little extra time to lie and then decide not to. At first, I suspected, the night after the storm, you wouldn't take my breath. You wouldn't meet my eyes. Your father said I was hysterical. We argued. There was a blood type inconsistency they said was an error, and then they fixed the error by changing the record. I told myself I was grieving my body, not you. How long? Isabella asked again. When you were to be inside, you had a fever. We took you in. A nurse said something she shouldn't have said. Primera follow italiano? I found Elise, she cried, and I decided not to kill her. I asked for my child. She told me she couldn't undo it without destroying you both, and I made a choice I have to live in. Not to fix it, Maya said, flat. Not to find the girl you left. Vivian flinched at the verb. Did look? And then I stopped. Your father made it clear that neutrality was survival. We made a donation to a home. We looked again. I found someone once toddler. Boy? Not you. Not you. You found money, Maya said. Not me. Vivian closed her eyes. What would you have had me do? Announce at a board meeting that my daughter might not be mine. Invite wolves into the nursery. Your father would have... She stopped the sentence before it bit anyone. I told myself I was protecting you. Both of you. I told myself I would know when to move. Primera, dit, anything. You could have told me. Isabella sighed barely louder than the wind. Vivian's eyes softened. Finally, like a glass left in sunshine. I didn't know how to love you without owning you, she said. That is the worst sentence I've ever said. Maya exhaled. A sharp sound like a knife choosing a home. She watched Isabella's face. Saw the exact moment the scaffold of her resentment trembled. She didn't let it fall. Now we do this our way, Maya said. We've swabbed. We'll get paper. After that, we decide. Not you. Not your lawyers. We decide how to tell it and who deserves to hear it. Your father, Vivian began. We'll be told when we're ready, Isabella said. You will not warn him. If security shows at my school, if gray suits follow me, if a lawyer knocks on my friend's door, I will walk into a newsroom with this box and hand them the bracelets and the Polaroids and the letter. I will say your name into a camera without hatred. Don't make me do it with hatred. Vivian's spine remembered that it had once been soft. She nodded once. Small. Like a queen to a revolution she knew she couldn't shoot. What do you want from me? She asked, and the question contained an admission that she did not currently have it. Nothing, Maya said. Everything, Isabella said. They looked at each other, and then Maya amended. Truth. And no more games. Then I'll start, Vivian said, surprising herself. Laurent is not your biological father. She turned to Isabella. Knows. He chose not to know out loud. The man whose DNA you might carry was a mistake I made when I thought my marriage was a vase that could be glued. He is not in the picture. He is not useful. He is not safe. Do not find him. The rooftop pitched. The sky dimmed, then brightened, because it didn't know what else to do. Isabella stood very still, because movement felt like it might crack the earth. Do you have his name? Maya asked. Because someone had to be the engine. Vivian nodded. On paper. Locked? Locked. Her eyes slid to the box. Like everything else. Maya lifted the recorder a fraction. Vivian clocked it, nodded, didn't ask to turn it off. If you go to the press, she said. Not a threat. A map. It will become theirs. They will decide where to cry. They will eat you for breakfast and sell your bones as decor. If you let us manage this, we will need different verbs, Isabella said. And the sentence felt like her first real inheritance. Not manage. Not contain. Maybe repair. We can't repair a switch, Maya said. We can decide where to stand when the floor gives way. A noise sounded at the stairwell. Footsteps. Not hesitant. Not alone. Vivian's head whipped, dread reorganizing her face. She took a step forward. Hands up. Lioness emerging from the brand strategy. Alone. Isabella warned I Kemelom, Vivian said, voice thin with a fear that was not of heights. That isn't mine. A man in a gray suit emerged with another behind him, and a woman with a phone who looked like she wanted to become a phone. Their eyes went to the box with the Reverend Steve's, reserved for relics. The first gray suit smiled, the way snakes might if they bothered. Ladies, he said, let's bring this conversation somewhere safe. Maya moved before she thought. She scooped the box, slid it behind a low vent, and stood between the suits and the girls like a fire with legs. We're safe, here, Miss Deverex. The suit Saik ignoring Maya the way people ignore fences, until their car is on it. Your mother asked us to know, Vivian snapped. Real fury tipping its cup. I didn't. Then your father doesn't know, Isabella said, and won't. Not from you. The woman with the phone lifted it. Low. Recording already. Maya clocked it, took 2 steps, and stuck her own phone in the woman's face, with a grin bright as a threat. Great, she said. Document everything, especially the part where 3 adults corner 2 girls on a roof to confiscate evidence of a 20-year-old crime. The woman lowered the phone like a hand had slapped it. Walk away, Maya said softly to the suits. A softness that arrived with knives. Before this turns into the wrong kind of story. The suits considered the optics. Optics are gods in this city. They retreated with a few parting looks that promised a later that would be worse. When the door clanged shut, the wind returned to its ordinary job. Vivian stared at Maya with a new species of respect. She had not previously granted anyone she couldn't hire. You're dangerous, she said. I'm necessary. Maya answered it. They ended there, because endings are sometimes called intermissions, so people don't panic. Vivienne agreed to wait. She left by the stairs, every rung a prayer she didn't know how to finish. Maya and Isabella stayed after to breathe and to let the adrenaline climb down their bones. When the results come, Isabella said, "What do we do?" "We celebrate and mourn," Maya said. "Probably at the same time. Then we make a list." "What list?" "Of who deserves us," Maya said. They laughed because otherwise they would cry, then cried because otherwise they would laugh wrong. On the walk down, Isabella's phone buzzed. Not Vivienne. Not Laurent. A number she didn't know. A text that made the hairs on her arms stand up. Ikinawu paid. At least to keep silent in 2007. Cash a number with 6 zeros. "If you want the account, come alone." It was followed by a photo of a bank ledger. The kind of photos that isn't found, but bought. At the bottom, barely cropped, the corner of a familiar monogrammed letterhead peeked like a cat. The initials were wrong in the right way. Not LD for Laurent Devoro, but VD. Maya read over her shoulder. Her heartbeat turned into a door being kicked. "Of course," she said. "Your mother didn't just know." She made sure the knowing never left the room, or someone used her name, Isabella Said. Because loyalty is a muscle, and it doesn't atrophy overnight. "Or both," Maya said. "Two stories can be true. Pick the one that makes you move." They did not go alone. They never would again. They walked into the night like girls do when they have been given a key that opens a house they don't trust. The city watched without blinking. The rooftop cooled. The gray suits, called other suits. The nurse who had kept her promise slept without trouble for the first time in a year. In a mansion with hydrangeas that refused to misbehave. A mother slid down a door and pressed her hand against her mouth so nobody would hear the sound that money doesn't let you make. By morning, the photos from the gala had made their rounds, Isabella catching 3 flutes from midder. Maya's grin like a mutiny. A frozen frame in which their faces mirrored each other in a way nobody else understood yet. Blogs began to write who is the girl behind the tray. And is the Devoro, Eris, rebelling? And is there trouble in the glass house? The comments did what comments do. Guessed, gossiped, gored. At 10, the lab called. "We don't normally phone," the clerk said, paper crisp in her voice. But the results qualified for expedited. "You requested pickup." "They're ready." "How sure?" Maya asked. The clerk hesitated, then forgot policy. "Very." They went together. The envelope was heavier than it should have been. They carried it outside and stood by the dumpster because some truths belong next to trash, and some truths redeem it. Maya opened Italiano. Cerreada. Se. Look up. She didn't smile. "Full siblings," she said. "Probability? 99.998? The number made the air taste metallic. "We share both parents." Isabella grabbed the paper as if it might run. She stared at the letters until they rearranged into sentences. "Full siblings. But parents. The same mother and the same father," which meant a door opened somewhere into a hallway they hadn't considered. "That can't be right," Isabella whispered. "C'est Said." "She said Laurent isn't." "She didn't say the other thing," Maya said. "She didn't say you weren't his by accident or by plan. Maybe she told the truth sideways. Or the lab is wrong. Labs are wrong less often than people." They stood in the behind the lab stink. 2 daughters with the same parents, and none yet to claim them the right way. The paper shook. Tewin didn't help. "Next step," Maya said, "because steps are how you trick panic. We get a legal chain of custody test. One that would stand in court if we toss this into a courtroom and watch it burn. We put your father's DNA on it. Your mother's if we can. If he refuses, that's an answer. If he accepts, that's another." "He'll refuse," Isabella said. "Unless he's the kind of brave he hasn't been in years. Then we prepare for war and hope for a miracle." They didn't get a miracle first. They got a bomb. At home. A package waited for Isabella Thien, anonymous, no return address. Inside, a thumb drive and a note in a hand she didn't recognize. Check the footage. 2007, St. Aurelia Hospital, staff exit. Night of the storm. Maya plugged it into a library computer, because the Devereaux networks had eyes. The video was grainy, the angle bad, the timestamp real. In the frame, a woman with a scarf over her head, carrying a bundled infant clothes, moving with the careful speed of someone who wants to look on her. A second woman followed, pushing another infant in a bassinet with wheels that squeaked. A security guard stepped into the frame, raised a hand like a stop sign, then lowered it when a third figure approached with the confidence of a person who has never heard the word no. Vivian, younger, sharper, terrifying, that she spoke. They couldn't hear it. The guard stepped back. The women moved through, their faces hidden. The date stamp blinked, the year everyone had been handed the wrong life. Maya paused the frame and zoomed on hand bracelets, anything. The scarfed woman's wrist flashed plastic. The bassinet's ID tag swung, blurred, then revealed one letter when the angle caught a D. Then a smear on Vivian's face. An expression caught between terror and a decision she would not revisit. In the corner of the video, moving late, a fourth figure entered, arguing, grabbing at the scarfed woman's elbow. The camera lost them, then found them again at the edge. The fourth figure was Elise, younger, already watery with guilt. Maya She leaned back in the squeaky library chair like she'd been punched. Isabella stared at the screen as if the pixels could change if she loved them enough. She didn't switch us, Isabella said slowly, the words assembling themselves into a weapon and a bandage. She took us. Stole, Maya said. Rescued, Isabella said. Both. They watched the clip again, then again, because repetition makes a story feel truer, even when it's a knife. A librarian coughed politely, because time had a schedule. They pulled the drive, and left with it small in Maya's pocket, like a new heart. Outside, a gray suit waited. He did not pretend anymore. Behind him, a van idled, with its door open, like a mouth. The suit smiled in a way that meant he'd decided that optics were manageable. Ladies, he said, it's time to come with us. The gray suit took one step forward and Maya already knew how the next 10 seconds could go wrong. She measured the angle to the curb, the weight of the box in her backpack, the distance to the nearest witness. 2 teenagers leaned against a bike rack, with nothing to do, and the talent of filming everything. A grandmother stared from a bus stop like she'd seen this movie too many times. Back up, Maya said, low, almost friendly. You're in my sunshine. Where security? The man said. Your mother requested. She's not my mother, Maya said, and watched his eyes flicker in confusion at the pronoun math. And even if she were, you don't put girls in vans. Isabella's hand found Maya's sleeve and pinched twice via, translated into Morse. The second gray suit shifted, blocking the sidewalk in a way that would look reasonable on camera. The vendor yawned wider. Inside, nothing. No seats. Just space. Miss Devereaux the first said, choosing the target they understood. Please, for your safety. My safety doesn't fit in a van, Isabella sighed, voice steady in a way that surprised her. Let's not escalate, he said. Maya smiled. Let's... She dropped the backpack to her left foot like she was adjusting a strap. Her weight shifted, hips angled. The first suit clocked it, too late. She stomped the toe of his polished shoe, hard, and in the same motion shoved her shoulder into his sternum. He folded with a grunt that sounded expensive. The second grabbed for Isabella's wrist. Isabella twisted, like she'd practiced with a self-defense video at 2 a.m, breaking the grip and stepping sideways into a crowd that didn't exist, and suddenly did. The teenagers lifted their phones like torches. The grandmother at the bus stop stood and shouted something about daughters and wolves that made 3. Passersby, stop and glare. Maya hooked one arm around Isabella and peeled him away from the van. Fast feet, long strides, cutting across the street against honks. A driver braked and yelled. Maya blew a kiss, because rituals matter. Behind them, the suits recalculated optics and decided on retreat, for now. The van door slid shut, with a sound like a decision delayed. They didn't stop running until the city opened its mouth to swallow them. The covered market, the fish stall, stench, the maze of cheap textiles and counterfeit sunglasses. Maya led them through aisles that bent back on themselves like questions. She ducked into a jewelry booth owned by a woman who had watched Maya grow teeth. Tia Rosa, Maya said. Breath hot, 2 scarves, mismatched, and those sunglasses that make us look like mistakes. Rosa took them in at a glance. The sweat, the Shrembo, the Nachet Terzan, moved without comment. She wrapped their heads, pushed oversized frames into their hands, and tossed a handful of gaudy bracelets into Maya's bag. Cash later, she said. Go out the back. Tell your ghost to pay full price. In the alley, Isabella laughed once, a sound like glass at the end of its patience. It wasn't joy. It wasn't joy. It was relief, dressed in bad clothes. We almost got taken. We didn't, Maya said. Almost doesn't count unless you're dead. Who sent them? Pick a name on your mother's stationery. She. Said Sedidne. T call anyone. People in her world do things for them just to prove they can. They cut through to the train and rode 2 stops the wrong way before switching to a bus headed nowhere in particular. They sat at the back, heads down, indistinguishable from 2 girls who had just learned the price of being alive. Maya texted Luis if Anyoneasix. We never came home. Also, if anyone asks, we've always been home. Luis sent back a thumbs up and a photo of a frying pan because he communicated in memes when he was worried. Isabella pulled the lab envelope from her bag, looked at the probability again, as if numbers could grow teeth and defend them. Full siblings, she said. Half wonder, half curse. Means we share the best and worst of them. Maya, and swear it. Means we're not alone, even when we should be. Isabella tilted her head against the window. The city slid by in Pano's graffiti. Brick, a mural of a whale with stars in its belly. When she said, my supposed father isn't my biological one, she left out the other half. If we share both parents, then either Laurent is your father too, or she lied about him to protect someone else. Maya watched the reflection of herself layered over Isabella's face in the glass. In the overlay, they looked related in a way photographs sometimes couldn't catch. We put it on the list, she said. What list? Everything we don't know yet, ranked by how much it can explode. Number 1 used to be are we sisters. Now it's who paid the nurse, and who's our father on paper and in blood. Isabella opened her palm. Her hand shook. There's also what are we now? Maya covered Isabella's hand with her own. It, steadied. We're us, she said. Plus. Plus. They got off 3 stops early and walked a long way to the rooftop because the rooftop had become a church that didn't judge. On the way up, Isabella's phone buzzed again. A new number, a new trap. Bring the video to the old docks, storage unit 42, 6 p.m. alone. No cops. You want names. You want accounts. Bring the box. She showed Maya. If I were writing a bad movie, Maya said, this is where we go and get tied to chairs. Go. Oh, absolutely, Maya said. But we bring chairs they can't see. They set the box down on the roof and went through it again, slower this time. Like surgeons revisiting a body for the detail they missed. There were the Polaroids, the bracelets, the staff schedules with circles around the night shift, and a photocopy of a report with most of it blacked out. In the corner of that copy, a stamp. Records request denied. The denial was signed with initials they recognized now. VD, your mother wasn't just looking, Maya said. She was erasing. Or someone using her name was. Either way, we're going to need more than pretty speeches. Maya took out the portable recorder and set it on the vent box. We do bland prep. If they grab use, the recording goes quiet. Luis checks in every 5 minutes. If he doesn't get a voice, he drops the footage online with the lab result and the clip. We leave notes in 3 places that don't like each other. A church lady who hates rich people, and a councilman with an election. They'll trip over each other trying to own the story, and we make sure the suits know that. You've done this before, Isabella said, impressed and a little afraid. Not this, Maya said. But once you've had a landlord try to evict a building by accidentally flooding it, you learn distribution. They used a cracked phone to set up a dead-drop email, sent 3 pre-scheduled messages with attachments and instructions, and wrote a short, ugly summary of their truth. Switched at birth by a nurse. 1 raised rich, 1 poor. Evidence attached, more to come. Maya sent a 4th email to the number that one of the docs. We come with insurance. Try anything, and the city gets fed. The number replied with a thumbs-up emoji, which made Maya want to set the docks on fire before arriving. Before they left, Isabella called Vivi. She answered on the first ring like she'd been praying to a phone. Where are you? Somewhere you can't choreograph. Isabella Said. Don't send anyone. Don't call father. Don't do anything except make a choice. What choice? When this goes public? Isabella Said, the words steadying as they left the mouth that had been trained for lies. Who do you care about more? Us, or the glass house? If it's us, you'll meet us where we say. If it's the house, it will fall and cut you and you'll hold the shards like trophies. Vivian's breath shook. Once, where? Isabella told her a different place than the docks, and a different time than the truth. Then she hung up, turned off the phone, and pulled the battery. A trick she'd learned 10 minutes ago from Maya and decided belonged to her now. They dress rung for the docks. Overalls from a thrift store for Isabella, making her look like a girl whose father fixed boats. A fluorescent safety vest over Maya's hoodie, making her look like she belonged in every restricted area. The sun sagged, tired of lighting scenes it hadn't agreed to. Unit 42 was a corrugated mouth with a lock that had seen more stories than confessionals. The yard was open enough to make traps obvious, but corners existed too, and corners are where trouble squats. Maya scanned, counted cameras, counted shadows, counted gulls, because birds noticed the wrong kind of quiet. A figure stepped out from behind a stack of pallets, hands open. Not a suite. A woman with hair, dyed an exhausted blonde, the color of cigarette ash, wearing a janitor's jacket from no building in particular. She was mid-40s, maybe younger, with the face of someone who would not be recognized by her own yearbook. She nodded at the unit. "You have it?" she said. "Who are you?" Maya asked. "Someone who doesn't get paid enough to keep my mouth shut anymore." "You sent the ledger and the video," she said. "I was on staff then. I saw things I wasn't supposed to see and I kept breathing. I kept breathing for money. Then my kid got sick and the money stopped and the breathing got expensive." "What's your price?" Maya asked. "Because the world is a market, not money," the woman said, surprising them both. "Protection? If I give you names, you'll paint a target on me. I need to be made too big to kill." "Go public," Isabella said. "I don't have what you have." "You have story. I have fragments and fear." Maya leaned against the door of 42. "Open it," she said. "Dot inside a box, like theirs but messy. Copies of copies. An HR memo about a nursery assignment after a complaint that never became an incident. A visitor log with names that had been scribbled and read. A bank statement with withdrawals in cash on the nurse's route to work. A photo of a car with plates have in the corner of the photo. A hand, manicured, a ring with a green stone," Isabella whispered automatically, then shook her head. "No. She hates emeralds. She says they make her look sallow." "Then who?" Maya asked. The woman pointed to the ledger. "Look at the initials. VD isn't one person. It's a signature they use when they don't want to use their own. It stands for the Foundation. Vidomus. Latin, House of Life, or whatever lie they preferred that year. The money didn't come from your mother alone. It came from the machine." "Who signed?" Maya asked. "Board member authorization," the woman said. "2 signatures required. One was the chair. One was someone with access to petty cash, which is what they call sin when it's under 6 zeros. "Names," Maya said gently. A softness sharpened into a blade. The woman handed over a sheet with 2 names circled. One they expected. The other they didn't. Lauren's business partner, the man who toasted Isabella at her 16th birthday and told her to always choose the high road because the low roads were crowded with the dead. The yard creaked. Gauss lifted. Maya's neck prickled. She shoved the woman into the unit and pulled Isabella behind a stack of boxers just as footsteps. Multiple entered. The door clanged shut halfway and stuck. In the gap, a faced gray suit, number 1, smiling like he'd learned nothing. "You really didn't come alone," he said. "Same." "Same." He stepped in with 2 more. The woman trembled beside them, hands over her mouth. Maya slid her phone under a box with a recorder app already pulsing, and then stood up. Careful, empty hands, high the way she'd been taught when she was 16, and innocence had to be performed. "Out," she said. "We're not your cargo." "You're not our anything," the suit said. "You're our problem." "Problems get solved," Maya said. "But sometimes they go viral first." From inside the unit, a sound. A small, sweet chirp. The alarm Maya had set for Luce's 5-minute check-in. She didn't answer. The app did it for her, pinging a pre-written message. "All good." At the same time, a second timer hit 0, and a tiny red light under the box blinked Cliffstream armed, if no movement detected for 60 seconds. Maya shifted her weight so the sensor would see her, then moved again to ensure it didn't. If it went live, it would go to 3 places at once, and those places would eat men like this for breakfast, if only for sport. The suit saw the light at the exact wrong moment. "What is that?" he asked, stepping forward. "Insurance," Maya said. He went for it. Maya moved faster. She kicked the box aside, grabbing the ledger page with the names and tucking it into her vest with a magician's speed. Isabella pulled the woman toward the gap. A hand closed on Isabella's arm tight, bruising. She twisted, remembering the self-defense video, stepped into him, and dropped her weight. He stumbled and swore. The woman slid through the gap. A breath of freedom. But another suit reached, yanked her back by the jacket, and the seam tore with a sound like a scream. "Let her go," Isabella said, voice bright, with something new. "She's not yours." "No," the suit said. "She's yours." Maya smiled, with no humor. "Exactly." Outside, a car engine revved. It sounded like expensive help arriving. Inside, the red light blinked faster. 30 seconds. 25, Maya calculated, if they ran now. The stream would start and the world would watch 3 men chasing 2 girls and a witness into a yard with no cover. If they style, the men might break the recorder and the insurance would be worthless. That noise arrived from an angle Maya hadn't planned for. A motorcycle, loud and joyful, shot into the yard. Its rider without a helmet, hair like a flag, grin like a felony. Loesi skidded and knocked into a stack of pallets that toppled in the most dramatic version of accident he could manage. Wood crashed. Men swore. Birds exploded upward. In the chaos, Maya grabbed Isabella, shoved the woman ahead, and they slid out through the gap like water avoiding a fist. Louise screeched past. Maya hopped on behind him like she'd been born on motorcycles. Isabella ran. The woman ran. The Sioux tripped on wood and pride. "Get on?" Louise shouted to Isabella. She hesitated 1 dumb second, a kind of hesitation. Rich girls are trained into then vaulted onto the back like a girl who had been practicing for nothing and everything. The woman dove for the side door of a passing pickup, banged on it, screamed help, and for once the city behaved. Breaking, opening, sheltering. They roared out. In Temira, the suits shrank into dots. The live stream didn't trigger. Maya had kicked a sensor away at the exact last second. That meant no immediate coverage. That also meant their enemies wouldn't know where the insurance would hit. That ignorance was its own weapon. They didn't stop until they were 3 neighborhoods away. Lungs raw, 4 arms shaking from the ride. They pulled into a dead lot behind a dead nightclub, killed the engine, listened to the hot tick of the bike cooling, counted their bones. That Isabella slid off, legs jelly. She started laughing, then crying, then laughing again because the body only knows 2 dances at the end of the world. Maya pressed her forehead to Isabella's for 1 second. Just breathing. Just proof. "We need to move faster," Maya said, voice shredded. "And smarter." Isabella sat, and together. The woman in the pickup sent a text to the number Maya had scrawled on her palm before pushing her into safety. "I'll talk," it said, "but I want a church. And cameras. And witnesses that don't drink wine from crystal." Don Meyer texted back. Then, to Isabella, "We make a stage they can't make cut. Tomorrow, community hall. We invite everyone who hates everyone. We blow the doors off. And we don't wait for your mother's permission." Isabella looked at the ledger page with the circled names, at the ink that had stained her skin like fate. "We invite her anyway," she said. "And your mother, the foster one. And the nurse who mailed the letters, friend. And the janitor who kept our ghosts in a box. We let them all sit in the same light and see if any of them melt. And if they send suits, we send them home in public." They built it that night. Flyers printed on a stolen code at the library. DMS, 2 neighborhood organizers and the church lady Rosa recommended, and a podcaster who ate scandals for breakfast, and a lawyer who hated foundations because one had bankrupted his mother's clinic. They sent the video clip to 3 people with instructions. "Don't post yet. Show up. Film. When the word switch is said, press go." They texted. Vivienne, 1 sentence. Tomorrow 3. St. Brigid's Hall. Come if you want your voice on the record. They texted Laurent. Nothing. At 2 in the morning, Isabella crept into the Devereux house through the back, using a key she wasn't sure still fit. It did. In the dark, the hydrangeas were blue if you lied to yourself. She climbed the stairs past portraits that had never liked her. Outside Vivian's door? She paused. Inside, the sound of someone awake and carefully not crying. She slid a note under the door. I'm giving us a chance to be braver than we were. Don't send wolves. In the morning, the city woke up hungry. News sites ran photos with captions that got details wrong because that's how the day begins. The church hall filled with a crowd that looked like it might argue and then agree and then argue again. The janitor woman sat in the front row with a paper cup of bad coffee and a face that had decided to live. Luis checked the mics like a roadie about to save a band. Rosa brought empanadas, because people need food when truths get sharp. At 2:58, Vivian walked in, alone, wearing a plain dress that made her look like the teacher she might have been in another universe. She sat in the third row and folded her hands as if prayer could be learned late. That's 3 o'clock. Isabella and Maya stood up together, and the room made a sound people make when they realize a day will turn into a story they'll tell with their hands for years. Maya clicked the recorder. Isabella looked at her sister and nodded once, smiled like a queen to a revolution she had decided to join. Hello? Isabella said into a microphone that belonged to the church and no one else. We were switched at birth, Maya added, and some people tried to keep it that way. The room inhaled. Pones. Lifted. Somewhere across the city, a suit's phone vibrated like a conscience, and as the first questions began to fly, as the janitor woman reached for the mic, as Vivian stared at her daughters and saw the shape of a life she had almost thrown away, a fourth figure slipped into the back of the hall. Caplo, posture familiar to exactly one of the three at the front. Laurent stood against the wall, listening, his face a map with a new country drawn on it, and in his hand a white envelope that looked like a surrender or a bomb. He stayed by the door, as if distance could control the blast. He didn't blink when a few heads turned. Men like him had learned to stand inside their own weather. Isabella saw him first. Her voice didn't falter. We have evidence, she said, holding up the photocopied staff schedules and the 2 plastic bracelets, like relics. We have a letter from a nurse who confessed before she died. We have video from the night the hospital lost power. Maya set the ledger page on the table so the cameras would catch the circles. And we have names. Monimobeth, people, Scythe. The lie wasn't an accident. It was funded. A murmur rolled through the room, like a small earthquake, checking its range. The janitara woman stood. Her hands shook, then steadied on the mic. I worked nights at St. Aurelia. That storm of wraithing went crazy. We were told to follow instructions, and the instructions came from people who never touched a patient. I saw Mrs. Devoto that night. I saw Nurse Moreau. I saw a guard step aside. I should have said something. I didn't. I'm saying it now. Vivian's breath made a sound. She lifted her hand. The hall hushed, because even hatred wanted to hear what she'd do with her mouth. I am not proud, she said, voice careful, words feeling for a path of many things. But I will not let other people arrange this truth without me. She walked forward, slow as a confession. She stood beside the girls and faced the crowd. And for the first time in years she looked like a person whose power wasn't money but will. There was a suspicion, she said. There were choices. Primera ma de som. My husband made others. My world believed it could fix anything with discretion. We were wrong. If there is a reckoning, I'll stand in it. Her gaze cut to the back wall. Loren. He didn't pretend to be surprised. He walked up, envelope in his hand, and placed it on the table like a treaty. You deserve this from me, he said to Isabella first. Then to Maya, as the rest of the room realized who she was to him. Both of you. He turned to the crowd. The microphones, the phones, the hungry. 20 years ago, I learned something I did not have the courage to say out loud. I let lawyers in fear keep my house quiet. Today, I am done with quiet. Maya's jaw tightened. Are you the chair who signed? She asked, tapping the circled name on the ledger. He stepped closer, looked down, and didn't flinch. No. But I knew who did. I protected him because he was my friend, and because he told me protection was love. He lifted the envelope and slid out a sheaf of papers emails, printed with headers. A letter from the hospital Isurist office, a memo with Vidomas, stamped like a halo. I collected these 4 years, and then hid them from myself. Take. Then Isabella didn't reach. She looked at him like you look at a horizon when you're deciding whether to swim. Are you my father? She asked, quiet enough for the room to lean in and hate itself for it. He answered like a man who had run out of tricks. In every way I knew how. Yes. In blood. We'll test. Publicly. with chain of custody. If it says, no, I will not say no. Maya exhaled through her nose, anger and mercy wrestling. And if it says yes, then I'll spend the rest of my life deserving it. Darla tugged the mic again. There was also a cash account, she said, emboldened by the spectacle of rich people bleeding without a doctor. I've got numbers. I didn't bring them because I didn't want to die on the way, but I'll give them if someone promises I won't vanish. A voice from the second row. I'll take them. A woman in a plain suit, hair in a bun that had won wars. City attorney's office. She lifted her badge just long enough. If this is as bad as it smells, it won't belong to cameras for long. It'll belong to court. The room's temperature changed. Phones kept rolling, but now with the glee of witnesses who know the scene won't end with a shrug. The podcaster whispered into his mic like he'd found God. Rosa passed plates without asking for money. Maya leaned to the side, shoulder against Isabella's calibration. We need to control the next beats, she murmured. We already lost control, Isabella murmured back. Maybe we aim instead. She stepped to the edge of the stage and held up a hand until the noise dimmed. We're not here to destroy for sport, she said. We're here to tell the truth and see who it breaks and who it builds. If you came for blood, you can watch TV. If you came to make sure hospitals can't swap children like parcels and foundations can't buy silence, stay. Applause started in the corners, where the poor sit, because they know exits matter. It spread forward, reluctant at first, then full. In the doorway, 2 gray suits appeared and then disappeared, because even they knew when rooms were not theirs. The city attorney handed Darla a card, then another to Maya and Isabella. Chain of custody tests, she said briskly. We take samples today. We subpoena Cintorelia's archives. We issue holds on Vidomus accounts. We speak to a judge about protective orders for witnesses. And we advise you, she looked at the girls like a mother who didn't want the job but had it, to pick one journalist you trust and give them context. Sotis, toesti fracture into stupidity, pick Rosa, Louise called. And the room laughed, which saved everyone. Vivian cleared her throat. I will make a statement, she began, and Isabella laid a hand on her wrist. It was gentle, and it was an order. Not alone, Isabella said. With us. And with her, she nodded at Maya. And we won't read from paper we didn't write. Lawrence's phone buzzed. Ignored Italiano. The envelope on the table glared up at him like a duty. He pushed it toward the city attorney. It's yours. Not mine, she said, taking it. Ours. Outside, the day had turned bright like the sky was rooting for mess. Reporters clustered. A drone hummed above the steeple, until a priest glared at it, and it retreated like a chastised mosquito. The first official swabs were taken in a side room that smelled like bleach and pancake breakfasts. The city attorney signed seals, as if signing a pact. Laurent gave his sample without ceremony. Vivian did too, hands steady, chin up, eyes racked. On the church steps, a journalist with gray at her temples and no patience leaned into the edge of the scrum and said, not loudly, but with the weight of a bell, when you're ready to talk, come to me. I won't make you small. She handed a card with one name. Nadia Reyes. Maya pocketed it. Isabella nodded once, filed the name under oxygen. They didn't go home. Home was a verb they didn't know yet. They went to the rooftop with paper cups of coffee and the chain of custody receipts. The box sat between them like a new animal they had adopted against their better judgment. Do you hate her? Isabella asked, meaning Vivian, meaning maybe herself. Sometimes, Maya said. Then I remember, she's a person built by a machine that tells people like her they're gods. Gods make the worst mortals. And him? I don't know him yet, Maya said, meaning Laurent. But he showed up, without a tie, and with paper that hurts him. That's a start. Starts. Don't forgive. They begin. Us. We're the part I'm sure about, Maya said. Ju and me. That's the only piece nobody gets to buy. Isabella let out a sound that wasn't a laugh and wasn't a sob. A new sound that belonged to the day after a war you didn't choose. What if all of this ruins your life? It already did, Maya said. And it also fixed it. Night came up soft. The first article hit at 7 p.m. Nadia's byline up top. No clickbait context like a net. Dates and names, and the line that mattered. 2 young women. Switched at birth, in a private hospital during a storm. Confronted their families and brought receipts. Other stories followed. Some sloppy, some hungry, some mean. The foundation essay sites went dark for maintenance. The hospital released a statement about records retention and historical procedures that said everything and nothing. A law firm announced an internal review. The board chair lawyered up. Darla's face was on 3 feeds at once. In each, she looked like someone who'd finally spent a heavy coin she'd carried too long. At midnight, a text from an unknown number arrived. The ledger you have is incomplete. There's another account. Look for initials MB 2007 to 2010. Pattern: quarterly withdrawals. Always 2 days before board meetings. Stop thinking small. A friend who prefers you alive. Maya showed Isabella. MB, she said. Not VD. Ime Margrave. Isabella guessed, thinking of the law firm woman with the legal papier. Or someone softer, Maya said, scanning her memory. Board member. Benefactor? 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 Accountant? Or your father's partner? Martin Baines. Martin Baines? Isabella blinked. The man with the high road toast. The one who'd taught her to swing a golf club and never talked about his own childhood. If he signed, she said, he'll flip. Men like that always flip. If the fire gets close, then we light fires in the right places. Her phone buzzed again. Nadia. Off record tip. Board emergency meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m., Vitalmaz HQ. They'll try to suspend the foundation, then relaunch it with a new narrative to contain you. I'll be outside. If you want to change their story, show up loud. Loud we can do, Maya said, that they slept in shifts. Badly, on couches that weren't theirs, in a borrowed apartment above Rose's shop, where the wallpaper peeled like old lies. At dawn, they washed their faces in the same sink and laughed at the mirror, because the mirror did not know what to call them, and that felt like freedom. The HQ lobby was a glacier pretending to be a room. Security scanned badges. With politeness, that could become violence. Outside, cameras and curiosity multiplied. Nadia stood with a notebook and the patience of a woman who could outwait a sentry. At 7:57, Laurent arrived with no entourage. At 7:58, Vivian walked up in a suit that said, I'm here to break my own rules. Hair pulled back, eyes steady. At 7:59, Martin Baines slid from a car, smile already rehearsed, cufflinks unrepentant. At 8 o'clock, the glass doors parted. They didn't go inside. Isabella stepped onto the marble, Maya beside her, and spoke so the lobby heard and the cameras carried. We will not be part of a rebrand, she said. We want an audit. We want names and money on paper. We want an apology that costs something. We want Saint Aurelia to open its archives. We want a public admission that what happened to us is not an anecdote, it's an indictment. Maya lifted the ledger page. And we want the man with the initials MB to stop hiding. Martin smiled did the thing smiles do when they hit a wall. Approached. Hands up, ladies. Let's keep this civility, Maya said. Is the perfume money wears to hide the stink? Did you sign the cash disbursement that paid Nurse Moreau? Isabella asked. Each word a chisel dot. He hesitated, eyes flicking to Laurent, to Vivian, to the cameras. He tried a laugh. It died. We made many emergency expenditures after the storm. If there was an error, there wasn't, Vivian said suddenly, sharp as a snapped string. You advocated for it. You told us discretion protected the Foundation's mission. You told me mothers shouldn't be punished for doubts. You weaponized my fear. Gasps carry well in marble. Martin's face flattened. Vivian, he said softly, warning wrapped in a plea. Enough, Laurent said, voice gone iron. We vote. Inside. Now, with them watching. You don't have the votes. Martin snapped. Then the world'll see who voted to hide a crime. The board filed past like penguins forced onto Hudstone. The city attorney's deputies slipped in behind them with clipboards and a court order that had been signed at dawn. Nadia smiled the way only journalists and will smile when weather breaks their way. On the sidewalk, Maya and Isabella stood with hands nearly, not quite, touching. Whatever they do in there, Maya said, we keep our own score, and we don't let them turn us into an origin story they can sell, Isabella said. Already not for sale, Maya said. Isabella reached, finally, and took Maya's hand. It was an ordinary gesture that felt like a flag. Cameras caught it. The city saw it. Somewhere in a nursing home where the night staff had the TV on mute. A new patient watched the closed captions and whispered, without knowing why, Good. When the doors opened again, it wasn't over. It never is. But some things had moved. The board chair resigned with the performative dignity of men who only know one way to leave. An independent audit was announced, loudly. The city attorney took the microphone and said words like criminal inquiry and subpoena power and witness protection in a voice that made even marble listen. Nadia asked the last question. What do you want, personally? She said to the girls. Not to the board. Not to the cameras. Not for the story. For your lives. Maya answered first. A front door that doesn't scare, she said, and a name that doesn't have to choose. Isabella Said. A mother who learns to love without owning. A father who tells the truth even when it makes him small. A sister who never has to ask if she belongs. And after that, Nadia asked. Music, Isabella said. Engines, Maya said. They smiled at each other like a secret had finally found a window. Above them, in a corner office, an old narrative tried to reload itself and failed. The CD exhaled, then inhaled, because that is what it does. And far from the glass, in a pawn shop window, a dusty piano waited for two girls to walk in with money that wasn't us and play Ti Song Te Di, been hearing all their lives. They didn't go to separate homes that night. They drifted through the late light, like a small raft with too many oars and not enough map, and ended up, almost by accident, in front of the mansion that had raised one of them and rejected the other. The hydrangeas were polite, even in dusk. The front door, for the first time in its life, looked nervous. Maya stood at the gate, with the posture of a person who knew the rules of trespass. If I cross this line, she said, I turn into a statue that spits water. He'll spit champagne, Isabella said. Trying a joke because fear was a room she'd spent enough time in. Come on. One night, if it's awful, we run. I know a shortcut through the hedge that's better than any fairy tale. Maya glanced at the camera above the arched black glass. Red Dot then tilted her face to it, daring it to blink first. She shouldered her backpack and stepped through. The path whispered under their feet. Somewhere in the shrubs a nightbird rehearsed. The house inhaled. The door opened before they reached it. Not security. Vivian, in a linen shirt and bare feet, like a mortal trying on humility. Bainer. A few staff hovered in the polite fog of confusion. People stand in when the weather has changed, but the forecast hasn't. Stay if you want, Vivian said. And the words were a little clumsy in her mouth, like an unfamiliar language. Or don't. The blue room is made up. I put fresh sheets. She stopped, visibly startled at herself for offering such a small human detail. I always assumed thread count was a love language. Maybe I was wrong. You were, Maya said. Not cruel, just correct. Vivian nodded, as if receiving a lab result. I'll try another dialect. Louise texted from the curb, a photo of the gate with the caption, Go wreck their cutlery. Maya sent back a picture of her middle finger draped in pearls from the Foyer Consola joke, then stopped, set the pearls back, and smoothed them with 2 fingers like she was apologizing to a ghost. They followed a housekeeper up the stairs, a nervous smile, eyes that assessed like a mother's. The blue room was huge by anyone's standard but tried to look modest by the house's. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a bed like a cloud with tutors, a vase of pale roses that smelled too careful. On the dresser, someone had placed a wrapped box with a card. If you stay, V. Maya lifted the lid. Inside, keys. Not car keys, drawer keys, gate keys, a safe key, a jewelry box key, the whole belt of the castle. That's either generous or theatrical, Maya said. Probably both. Isabella sighed, and then watched Maya pick up the smallest key and put it on her ring anyway. They stood in the middle of the room, and let the space teach them how not to shrink. Isabella opened the windows, warm air sliding, carrying a little of the city like contraband. From below floated the distant metallic song of cutlery being set for dinner. Is it weird that I feel like a tourist in my own life? Isabella said. It's weirder that I don't, Maya said, dropping her backpack so it thumped expensive wood. She took her boots off and dug her toes into the thick rug with a grin like she'd earned it. Soft is a political statement. They didn't change. They went down as they were, Isabella y Natisha. That cost nothing and meant everything. Maya, in her hoodie and the fluorescent vest she'd forgotten she still wore. The dining room table had been shortened, 2 leaves removed, a little island and a sea of chairs. Place settings for 4. No staff hovering with platters. Dishes were already on the table, cooling slightly, like they'd been cooked by human hands. On a clock that misjudged readiness. "Sit anywhere," Vivian said, pouring water with a concentration usually reserved for strategy. "I attempted roast chicken. If it's terrible, we will respect it privately." Isabella lifted a fork. Maya lifted an eyebrow. "They foot? Wash. Fine. Better than the average emergency meal. Worse than anything a cook here would serve." It tasted like an apology had tried to be sold. "I don't cook," Vivian said, as if the truth might poison the plates if she didn't speak it. "I realized today that I've used other people's hands for so long, I forgot what my own were for. I thought, do something with them. Anything. Break a window?" Maya suggested. "Ten softened." "This is okay." Laurent arrived late, jacket in his arms, sleeves rolled from a day that had tried to chew him. He looked at the table like a stage he wasn't sure how to enter, and then at the girls like the script had started without him. "My he asked, hand on the back of a chair. Maya's jaw twitched. "This isn't your courtroom." "Then it's my kitchen," Vivian said, surprising herself. "Sit." They ate with the awkwardness of people who had to invent a past over a present. They tried safe topics music, motorcycles, whether the hydrangeas were dying of boredom. They failed at safe topics and ended up inside sentences that cost. Maya asked about bills. Not foundation ones, but electricity, water. "Garbage the mechanics of a house this size, automatic debits," Laurent said, a little defensively, and then realized the defense was against a truth that didn't attack. "We have a manager." "Of course," Maya said. "Rich people outsource gravity." Isabella kicked her lightly under the table, and then immediately squeezed her hand on top of it. A stupid invisible thing, and they both pretended not to notice that Vivian noticed and looked away quickly, guilty at having intruded on something she wanted and didn't own. After dinner, Maya wandered into the kitchen and met the rest of the house, the only way that counts. Elena introduced her to the night porter, a man with a stern mustache and a gentle cat allergy. To Beatrice, who did magic tricks with ironed shirts. To Julian, who had run the household before anyone at the table had been old enough to break rules, and who had a face like old oak. He clearly loved Isabella with the quiet rigor of someone who had taught her to tie her first shoelaces, and then pretended he hadn't. "You are the one we were preparing for without knowing it," Julian said to Maya, not quite smiling. "We turned down the temperature in the rooms at the back because houses get allergies when there's not enough noise." "Get ready for sneezing," Maya said. "Stomp." She asked questions people don't ask here. Where leftover food went. What happened to old furniture. Whether used soaps were discarded or donated. She offered to fix a squeaky hinge and was told, with relief disguised as formality, that help was welcome. She vanished for 30 minutes and returned with black grease under one fingernail and a triumph. "Look." Pantry door silenced. Dot in the music room. Isabella sat at the piano and played the melody that had stalked her for months. It poured into the house and found hallways it hadn't known it wanted. House staff paused at thresholds pretending to check a thermostat. A guard stood at the side entrance with a hand on his chest, surprised he still had one. Maya leaned in the doorway and listened with her eyes closed, a grin dissolving into something reverent. When Isabella stopped, Maya said, "Again. But wronger. Wronger. Break Italiano. Play a piece like your mother would hate it." So she did. Fierce, teeth in it. The polite melody set on fire. It made Maya laugh out loud and clap once, meaningfully. It also made Vivian sit on the carpet in the hall and lean her head against the wall because she couldn't ask to come in and didn't know how to deserve being invited. "Come inside," Isabella said, without looking up. Because some new sense had woken in her, Vivian stepped in barefoot, sat on the floor, and listened with her chin on her knees, like a teenager, punishing herself with hope. When the music lifted, she said, "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do we." Isabella's side hands hovering above keys. "We'll mess up together." "House rule," Maya said, flopping onto the rug like she owned gravity now. "No secrets. No microphones. No silent treatments. If you hate something, you say it out loud and That's remarkably specific," Laurent said from the doorway, trying the joke like a hand-me-down sweater. "Rule 2, Maya added. "We don't pretend the world outside doesn't exist. Rosa and Luis come here whenever they want. They don't have to use the service entrance. And nobody looks at their shoes." "Of course," Vivian said quickly, and then added, "And if you want, I'll come there." "Where They are. I won't send a car. I'll bring empanadas. The next morning, Maya woke in the blue room to sunlight, behaving like a puppy, chest light and heavy at once. She rolled to the window and looked down at the garden, at the rectangle of pool so confident of its own blue it seemed ridiculous. On the deck, a man in a suit practiced Tai Chi badly. She laughed into the pillow and texted Luis a video of it. Then she dressed terribly, on purpose cut-off jeans. Grease-streaked Tian took the back stairs to the kitchen. Because old habits survived even a new address, Isabella found her there, chewing toast and talking carburetors with the porter. I've been invited to observe rich people etiquette training at 11, Isabella said. Equal parts apology and plea. Help. They went together and sat through a woman with warm teeth telling Isabella how to enter a room with implicit superiority while pretending not to. The woman glanced at Maya as if she were furniture that had opinions. Eye contact should be controlled, the woman said. You want to project assurance without aggression. Like a swan, Isabella said. Deadpan. Exactly, the woman said, relieved to be understood. Maya coughed. Or we could look at people like we believe they're people. The woman's smile tightened. Confidence is a skill. So is kindness, Maya said, leaning back, legs out, absolutely herself. In the hall, Isabella leaned her head on Maya's shoulder and whispered, Do you ever feel like you're watching a magic trick you don't even want to learn? All the time, Maya said. Good news. You already have a better trick. What? You, Maya said, simply, when you're not pretending. They went to see Mariela that afternoon in a taxi because Isabella refused to drive her and Maya didn't want to arrive on a motorcycle like a threat. They brought groceries. Too many, the wrong kind, and cash in an envelope that Mariela tried to refuse 3 times before giving in with a warning look that had raised. Maya and Castilla raised the dead. Mariela hugged Isabella awkwardly, patted Maya sternly, and cried in the middle like mothers do when rooms get too full. She made tea the way poor kitchens do, with history. She told Isabella stories of toddler tantrums and scraped knees, like she was bequeathing a country. Sid told Maya in the hallway that she was proud, but that pride was sharp, and to hold it carefully. I'm not leaving you, Maya said. Eyes hot. I know, Mariela said. I've never been left. I've never been left. I've only learned to share. They took the pawnshop piano the next day. The owner pretended not to tear up when Isabella touched the keys like an oath, and Maya counted out cash, scraped from donations sent by strangers who had read Nadia's article and wrote messages with their transfers for the music, for the engine oil, for the truth. The delivery men grunted and cursed and congratulated themselves up the Devoro stairs with the kind of working-class commentary Maya adored. They set the piano in the music room, and the expensive Obedia instrument that had lived there silently judged it until Isabella played both at once, the grand like a river, the pawnshop like a pulsand. The room learned a new kind of listening. Vivian tried therapy. She found a woman named Nior, with a calm face and a vocabulary of questions that lifted the floor. She invited the girls once, awkward, and expected to be refused. Maya accepted out of spite and curiosity, both powerful engines. Isabella accepted because Maya did. They sat on a soft sofa and did not perform. Nora had them draw their lives like maps. A house here, an alley there, a rooftop where everything broke and wrecked. She did not try to fix them the first hour or the second. She asked what they wanted to carry into the next room and what they wanted to leave in the hall. Maya said she wanted to keep her edge and lose her reflex to bite when the doorbell rang. Isabella said she wanted to keep her music and lose the echo of other people's expectations in her bones. Laurent tried apology as a practice, not an event. He brought boxers from an attic nobody went into. Isabella's first shoes, tiny and ridiculous. A stack of drawings the housekeeper had saved from the trash. A video on a mini DV tape of a baby in a bath, solemn and outraged at bubbles. He stood in doorways like a man awaiting judgment and entered rooms only when invited. He also did one thing that mattered more than all the others. He moved money, quietly, then loudly. Then on paper the city attorney could frame. He diverted funds from foundation fluff to a program set up by Nadia and a coalition of hospital nurses. An independent switch audit. Free DNA for contested births. A legal fund for He announced it at a press conference without a tie. When a reporter asked if he was doing this for optics, Esai simply no. For penance, and the sentence did not fall over dead. There were fights. There had to be. Maya brought Luis to dinner, and he ate with his elbows on the table, and knocked over water and apologized, with a body that had learned to brace. A bored widow, in a silk blouse, dropped a line about rough edges at a small event, and Maya smiled, slow and dangerous, and told a story about hands at iron napkins for 20 years, without being named in a will. The widow flushed and said something brittle. Isabella put a hand on Maya's knee, under the table, not to stop her, justo saiem, here, and then said, out loud, in her soft little voice, that she preferred edges. They cut better food, Dob. Maya broke a year-long truce with a girl from the neighborhood, and they shouted in the street until laughter arrived, disguised as profanity. Isabella frose, then jumped in, translating anger to care with a clumsy grace that worked, because it was honest. Maya later said, impressed you de-escalated without a single management training, and Isabella said, my whole life was a management training. I'm building an exit. They made a studio out of a room nobody had entered in a decade. They painted one wall a color the house despised. They pinned photos and maps and scribbled lyrics with grease pencils. They put up a list titled, Rules for Us. We say it when it hurts. We leave doors ajar. We don't fix each other. We hold the ladder. We are allowed to be wrong. We are allowed to be loud. Every Sunday, pancakes. Every Friday, one selfish thing. On a Tuesday, Vivian knocked, and stepped into the studio, carrying a box that smelled like cedar. This was my mother's, she said, setting it down. Inside, scraps of fabric, old dress muslins, hand-stitched samplers with initials nobody in the house had said in years. I used to sew, she said quietly, before I learned to hire it out. To, ute. Maybe we could make something that's not a dress. They? Edith. Over a week, the three of them stitched a cover for the pawnshop piano chaotic patches. Old monograms turned inside out. Thread like little roads. They fought about patterns, about whether ugliness was honest, about whether perfection was a lie. And then they laughed, because the cover was undeniably both. When they laid it on the piano, the room changed temperature. On a Friday, they rode the motorcycle to the pier at dawn. 3 on the seat. Illegal and essential. The sky grew from bruise to milk. Maya let Isabella drive the last 100 meters, teaching with shouted instructions and a hand at her back. They parked badly and sat with their knees up and told each other the absurd stories they hadn't thought to tell early. Maya once convinced an entire bus that they were in a parade so nobody would be mad about the detour. How Isabella pretended to faint at a charity luncheon to avoid being handed to a camera, and then had to learn how to faint convincingly on YouTube. They invented a future on the railing, a small shop that fixed things, a late-night music series in a laundromat, a cookbook of mistakes. The kind of future that seems ridiculous until you realize it's already arrived. The official DNA results came, thick with stamps, signatures, chain of custody seals, full siblings confirmed. Biological parents Bibien Deberex and Lorraine Deberex. Maya set the paper down and stared at it like a paradox. Isabella laughed, a little while, then looked at Laurent and said, I don't forgive you because of a lab. I forgive you because you keep showing up. He cried without hiding it. He didn't try to hug her. She hugged him. Brief and real, and then stepped back into herself. They held a small family dinner the night. The audit team announced the rest 2 board members. 1 hospital administrator, a fixer whose job title had been consultant and whose actual job had been eraser. The TV was on mute. In the next room was captions like a Greek chorus. Rosa came and bossed the kitchen. Luis charmed a chandelier. Mariela gave advice to furniture. Nadia arrived late and left early and hugged like a deadline. Nora brought bread and didn't analyze anyone while they chewed. Julian stood in the doorway and wiped his eyes with the back of his hand when nobody looked. When the house had quieted and the dishwasher hummed its one true note, Isabella sat at the pawnshop piano and played the melody that had started it all, the one that had always felt like it belonged to a road she hadn't walked. Maya lay on the floor, hands behind her head, staring at the ceiling where old light had left invisible stains. Vivian sat on the rug, long legs folded, hair down, barefoot in her own house, without apology. Laurent leaned in the doorway, tie loose, face a map where the sea finally touched land. Isabella shifted mid-phrase and left room. Maya reached up, found the underside of the keys with her knuckles, and tapped rhythm that didn't belong in any school. They made a new Songerjan Tenda, wrong in all the ways that made it true. Halfway through, without warning, Bibia, now word she, didn't trust them but a hum from a place young and It was thin, then fuller, then quietly beautiful. She stopped, embarrassed, and the girls didn't clap because that would have broken it. They smiled at her like witnesses. Again, Maya said softly. They did it again, and when they finished, when the last note had the courage to hang in the air a second longer than anyone expected, nobody spoke. There are moments that talk would only later, in the blue room, lights off. Maya whispered into the dark. You know what I hate? What? That happiness feels like a trick. It's not, Isabella said. It's a room. We get to furnish it. What do we put in first? A lock on the inside. Isabella Said. And felt Maya's love, as much as she heard it. They made new rituals. Tuesday nights were for bringing someone from the old life into the new. The boy from the bakery who loved poetry. The bus driver who let Maya ride for free once and pretended not to remember. The seamstress who refused tips but accepted leftovers. Thursday mornings were for learning each other's skill sets. Isabella changed oil and swore at bolts. Maya learned Chopin and did not throw the she music when it mocked her. Sunday afternoons were for being lazy in a house that had always measured worth by schedules. There were stumbles that mattered. Vivian backslid into secrecy, once took a call on the terrace, and whispered about optics. Maya heard, confronted, raised her voice until a bird flew. Vivian listened, swallowed pride like a bad pill, walked it inside, and made the call back on speaker, confessing and correcting with the clumsiness of a person learning to be new in public. There were unexpected kindnesses, security, those silent walls with earpieces, adjusted so that protection felt like respect, not control. When André, father of 3, laughed like a ballast, Maya 4 tips on loosening a rusted bike lock. She taught him lemon juice and patience. He taught her where the blind spot under the north camera really was, because freedom needs knowledge. New cycles spun, then moved on because the world is hungry and nothing fills it. Some people wrote op-eds that were wrong. Some apologized later, privately. The foundation was gutted and reassembled under supervision. Saint hired new leadership after 2 resignations that weren't called resignations. The city passed a small law that would have made Elise's job harder to do wrong. It wasn't enough. It was something, on a warm night, that thought it was autumn. They opened the garden to neighbors. Lights in trees. Paper plates. Music that kept switching between the pawnshop piano and a Bluetooth speaker that didn't respect eras. Kids ran on grass that had never seen sneakers. Old men told lies that got better with the telling. Vivian moved through it all with a picture and a humility that was not performance, and that, if you squinted, looked like joy. Laurent stood at the grill in an apron that said, "Kiss the traitor," because Louise had thought it was hilarious, and Laurent had decided he could survive hilarity near midnight, when almost everyone had gone and leftovers had been forced into take-home containers, and the stars had decided to show off. Maya and Isabella lay on the warm stones by the pool with their feet just touching water. "Do you think we'll ever be normal?" Isabella asked. "No," Maya said cheerfully, "but we can be honest about everything, especially the ugly." "I'm scared," Isabella said, and the sentence was plain, unadorned, precious. "Me too," Maya said. "We'll carry each other." Like smugglers, they turned their heads at the same time to look. Same eyes, different history, same history now. The house behind them had not become innocent. Houses don't, but it had learned new sounds. Laughter with teeth, music that didn't ask permission, footsteps not tiptoeing, and inside, in a drawer unlocked by a small brass key now living on Maya's ring. The letters and bracelets were wrapped in a soft cloth knot, hidden, not displayed, just waiting, like proof that a lie can be turned, with enough hands and enough noise and enough stubborn love, into a family the day after the party. Maya found a note under her door, crooked and human. "I'm going to the market for the first time by myself, buying empanadas. Do I need cash or does charm work? V." Maya wrote back on the other side, "Bring both," and a tote bag with no brand name. When they met in the hall, both women looked surprised and relieved that the other had come empty-handed and full-hearted, and they went out the back door together, past hydrangeas that had learned to misbehave, into a city that had learned their names and now, finally, deserved to keep them. She learned the house at night by walking it, barefoot, hands skimming walls, counting steps between corners, memorizing where the floorboards sighed. The first week, sleep never settled. It hovered above her like a cautious bird, She missed the clatter and racket of the old building neighbors, arguing in a language she had, the water pipes complaining like old men. Here the quiet felt like a test she hadn't studied for, so she mapped it until it belonged to her. Downstairs, the refrigerator hummed a note she decided was an A. The pantry door she'd fixed stayed silent, like a child who'd learned manners. On the third night, she found a narrow back stair the staff used. It smelled of lemon oil and history. She sat midway, halfway between upstairs money and downstairs labor, and let herself be both. Isabella found her there at 4 a.m, knees tucked to her chest, hoodie strings in her teeth. "You okay?" Isabella asked, voice soft so the house wouldn't wake, and pretend it had an opinion. "I'm calibrating," Maya said. "Every sound here is polite. It freaks me out." "We can teach some of them to be rude." "Already started," Maya said, and pointed at a clock whose chime she'd detuned, so it no longer sounded like a museum. They grinned into the dark, because mischief was a kind of courage. By day, the city tried to turn them into a story it could file. Strangers sent letters in kindness and an occasional insult with correct spelling. Reporters called until phones lived in drawers. The city attorney's office moved with an energy that suggested either justice or theater. Maya didn't care which, as long as the paperwork had teeth. Saint Aurelius, new administrator face pale with inherited shaman, invited them to walk the maternity ward with him. They did, and Maya asked questions until a nurse with calm hands smiled and said, "Good. Keep asking. Don't let us get comfortable where we shouldn't." They set up a weekly clinic at the community center. Free DNA counseling, legal advice for birth disputes, a table where a woman named Serafina brought coffee so strong it could file lawsuits. Isabella handled intake with a patience that had nothing to do with charm. She was good with trembling, with anger that wore a polite coat. Maya handled the door, the printers, the chaos, the men who wanted to posture and ended up filling out forms. On the second Saturday, a woman arrived with a shoebox. "If I open this," she whispered, "I won't sleep again." Maya said, "You bring it. We'll hold the lid with you." They didn't fix it. They didn't promise. They kept the lid from snapping shut while the woman breathed and decided. Sometimes that was enough. Vivian began to practice presence like a new pianist scales awkward daylum necessary. She showed up to the clinic without earrings and with water bottles, stood at the back, and watched without announcing herself. Once, when a woman started yelling at Isabella about the kind of mothers who by silence, Vivian stepped forward and said, "Some of us did. I did. I'm here to help you break my habits." It didn't absolve anything. It cut a path later that week, Maya said. "You know, this can't just be charity, right?" "I know," Vivian said. "Tell me when I make it theater." "Don't ask us to be nice while we do," Maya said. "I won't," Vivian said. She didn't. The first real fracture came from an unexpected joint. The safe in the study. It had been a prop in Lorenz's life documents, passports, a watch box that looked embarrassed by itself. The key Vivian had left in the blue room fit. But there was also a code. Maya didn't ask. She watched his hands the next time he opened it. The numbers lived in muscle memory: date of the IPO, wedding anniversary. The number of the hospital room where Isabella had not been born. She could see the flinch when his finger hovered over the last digit. "Tell me the thing you haven't said," she told him in the doorway, because secrets have weight, and she could smell it. Better now than while someone else is holding a microphone. He closed the safe gently. "The night of the storm," he said. "When Vivian called me from the hospital, I didn't go immediately." Maya waited. He did not fill the silence with excuses. "I kept going. I was at a meeting. Baines was there. We were closing a deal that would make the foundation look like a savior for a school. We were quietly pushing the city to shutter. It was a good deal if you didn't look at the corners. I told myself Vivian was dramatic. I told myself nurses handled storms. I arrived late enough that decisions had already been made by people who should never have been asked to make them. That delay has been echoing in this house ever since. I'm sorry isn't enough, I know. But I need it said out loud. I would like to be interrupted by my daughter's birth. I would like to be the kind of man who is in." Maya watched him the way. He did not look away. The way he let the sentence stand there and be tested. She said, "You don't get points for the confession. You get opportunities." "To do what?" he asked. "To be interrupted now," she said. "To stop a meeting and say, I have to go hold the door at a clinic where the coffee is better than the optics. To sit in a folding chair and take numbers. to return a phone call from someone with no last name. That sort of thing. He nodded like a sentence had been assigned. The next Thursday, he was at the clinic by 9, fetching chairs, lifting boxers, receiving no applause. He wore jeans he hadn't earned and sneakers with too clean laces. By noon, his cuffs were dirty. By 2, his hands had learned a new shape around paper cups. Nobody thanked him. He went back the week after, and the week after that. Maya insisted on a meeting between Vivian and Mariella, with no translators except patients. They met at Mariella's table. Laminate with a burn mark. Sunlight falling in a way that made even unpaid bills look dignified. Rosa brought empanadas. Luis sat on the stoop with headphones, eager to intervene, willing to pretend he wasn't. Mariella said nothing for a long time. Vivian did the small brave thing and kept her mouth closed too. When words arrived, they were simple. I had her, Mariella said, nodding toward Maya's empty chair sheet. Gone outside to give the women the room. I kept her alive with garbage bags when the ceiling leaked. I taught her to make soup out of nothing. I couldn't give her a piano. I gave her a spine. Vivian put her hands flat on the table, as if surrender meant being visible. You saved my daughter, she said. While I buhat mine. I can't return what you did. I can only lift where you are tired. I don't want your money, Mariella said. I believe you'll be Bibi and Said. What do you want? I want to be asked, Mariella said. I want to be told before you decide what helping looks like. I want to hear you say you're wrong on days you are, and I want to be allowed to slam a door and still be welcome to open it next week. Yes, Vivian said, without bargaining. They ate in a silence that wasn't hostile. Later, in the hallway, Mariella hugged Isabella with the easy right of a woman who hadn't earned it on paper but had earned it anyway. You play beautiful, she said gruffly. Your mother, she nodded toward the kitchen, Singzovki. You to make it work. No romance entered, but love less glamorous, more The house learned to hold it. Security rotated less like a perimeter and more like neighbors. Staff stopped whispering when the girls entered. Instead, they started teasing. Miss Maya, we hid the wrench. Go use a spoon like the rest of us. Mrs. Abeya, play us out while I burn the onions. Titled Soften, the name stayed. On a Tuesday, the first lawsuit landed. A family from 15 years back. A birth that had never felt right. A paper trail that was ragged but persistent. The city attorney asked if Maya and Isabella would sit with them before the press conference, off camera, just to make the room less terrifying. We're not mascots, Maya said. No, the city attorney said. You're proof. Some people need to see it standing up. They went. The familia woman, with fatigue around her eyes. A man with the careful hands of a mechanic. A kid of 12, watching everything, looked at the sisters and exhaled. Isabella sat beside the kid and showed him how to breathe into his hands when the room got too sharp. Why do people do this? The boy asked, not expecting an answer. Because they think they can get away with it, Maya said. Make them wrong. The audit report came out, heavy. Names, dates, the sick geometry of discretion negotiated over coffee. 2 arrests turned into 5. Baines ran to ground his reputation, and discovered ground got slippery. The foundation didn't close. It became unrecognizable on purpose. A board with no last names met in a public room with fluorescent lights and ugly chairs and learned to be okay with not being impressive. Nights got easier. Maya started to sleep without scanning the dark. She still walked sometimes. For pleasure now, a guard checking a home that had volunteered to be a home. She carried a small set of tools in her hoodie pocket because being useful is a security blanket you can fold. She fixed a loose banister. She rehung a door that had always stuck for staff and never for guests. She left the screwdriver on the counter where Vivian would find it. Like a breadcrumb trail, back to humility. Isabella deepened her own edge. She stopped rehearsing politeness and discovered she had a voice that didn't wobble when told no. At a press event, a donor tried to pivot the conversation toward the new youth center named after him. It's about the children, he said, teeth bright. It's about the adults who made rules that let them be lost, Isabella replied. We can talk about your plaque next time. At home, she set firm boundaries, with a grace that didn't bleed. I won't be at that lunch, she told Vivian. I have intake at the clinic. Invite them here, she told Lauren's assistant. If they can't eat on paper plates, they can't help us. She still played the pawnshop piano every night. She wrote a piece that started with the melody that had stalked her and braided into it the rhythm of feet on clinic tile, printers spitting paper, a kettle clicking off. She didn't name it. She didn't have to. The last truth surfaced not as a confession but as a mistake. In a box of Foundation archives old newsletters, photos where everyone smiled like they were in on the joke, Maya found a binder labeled Legacy Stories. Inside, glossy profiles of beneficiaries and patrons, and one write-up of a miracle neonatal save in 2007. A baby born during the blackout, thriving against odds thanks to swift coordination between staff and family. The photo was grainy but cruelly clear. In the background, a figure with a scarf over her hair and a plastic band on her wrist, the same band they'd seen in the video. The Katsan named her community volunteer. The volunteer's name was wrong. The nurse's name was missing. Ate Bodame quote attributed to the board chair. In a crisis, our values guide us. Maya brought it to the kitchen table like a lit match. The four of them stood over it. Nobody spoke first. Finally, Vivian said, I remember that newsletter. I remember thinking, at least we did something good that night. She touched the edge of the page as if it might bruise. I let that sentence take up space in me that didn't belong to it. Laurent looked older and truer than he'd looked in a year. I signed the print run, he said. I thought, the story will calm donors. I thought, maybe it will calm my wife. He met Maya's eyes. I'm sorry. Burn it, Maya said. They didn't actually burn it. They scanned it, filed it under evidence, and mailed copies to the city attorney and Nadia. Then, at the next clinic they pinned it to a corkboard with a sign. Stories we believed that hurt us. Beneath it, people started adding their own phrases, receipts, lies told with good hair and good lighting. The board got heavy on a gray morning that decided not to rain. They opened St. Aurelia's new policy meeting to the public and stood in the back while nurses spoke into microphones about protocols and paper and human beings. An older man in a cardigan asked from the floor, "What happens now?" Isabella answered, not from the stage, not into a mic, but out loud enough to carry. "We stay," she said. "That's all. We stay when the cameras go. We answer phones. We show up when it's boring. We learn people's names and keep using them. We let the truth be ordinary." After the meeting, in the corridor, a janitor with a tired face and a badge that said, "A Delgado" stopped Maya. "You too are loud," he said. "Not unkind." "We try," Maya said. He nodded at a door with a sign that read "Record Staff Only." Some things Dante opened too loud. They opened too steady. He slid her a folder he wasn't supposed to have taken out. Inside, memos that contradicted. Memos that contradicted. Statements on letterhead patterns. The kind that courts and newspapers understand. He looked at her the way mechanics look at engines assessing what can be saved. "Make study loud," he said. They did. Not with fireworks now, but with a drumbeat. Weekly updates. Public logs. A website Rosa's nephew made where whistleblowers could leave documents without leaving their names. An annual night, where mothers spoke and were not correct. A pot of stew that never ran out. At home, they made normal. It looked ridiculous at first, and then fit. They argued about the laundry, not as metaphor, but as laundry. They scheduled a chore wheel because equity requires graphs sometimes. They watched bad TV, and yelled at plot holes. They let silence be a hallway, not a threat. One night, months after the first envelope had arrived and rearranged the furniture of their lives, Maya stood at the window of the blue room and watched the city blink. Isabella came in without knocking, flopped onto the bed, and stared at the ceiling. "Do you ever think about the life we didn't live?" Isabella asked, like a museum exhibit behind glass. "Sometimes," Maya said. Visit Italiano. "I steal one thing and leave." "What do you steal?" "A memory of you laughing at something dumb," Maya said. "What do you take?" "A toolbox," Isabella said, and they both laughed because it was exact on to who. Vivian hummed along to a song she'd finally learned the words to. In the study, Laurent read a report without letting it tell him who he was. In their garden the hydrangeas misbehaved exactly the right amount. In a drawer, the bracelets lay in their cloth. Not a threat, not a shrine. Just proof that the wrong story can be righted if enough hands refuse to set it down. Sleep came easier. When it didn't, Maya walked the house once. Not to muppet, but to say hello. At the back stair, she paused halfway between past and present and future and listened hard. The hum was steady. The quiet didn't feel like a trap anymore. It felt, finally, like rest.